Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to start our budget workshop here, starting at 6 o'clock, 6:02 to be exact. This is part 2 of our budget workshop. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Drosky,
Here.
Commissioner Hudak, Commissioner Parnes,
Here.
Vice Mayor Preston,
Here.
Mayor Gantz.
Here. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. City Manager, we'll get started.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Commission, members of the public and staff. Today is day 2 of our public workshop for the budget for FY22. Today we'll be going over most of the operational departments. And I will say that we did discuss yesterday in the beginning of the presentation some initiatives that I had brought forth, and I think that also Commissioner Drosky has brought forth. And as we go through these operational presentations, just note that they do not reflect those changes. These are as is if we did not make the change. So we did reflect yesterday some decreases, some changes in personnel, and those sorts of things that would occur if we do make that change. But what you'll see today is as if we did not make those changes. So we'll go ahead and start with law enforcement. So this year, we've seen a significant increase in our private partnerships with our Operational Tactical Intelligence Center. Many more commercial and residential video camera feeds are now going into the OTIC. And yesterday, we talked about some of the ones that have come into the city as well. So they have such a wider net of visualization on the city now than they did when they first started the OTIC approximately. How long ago was that, Chief?
That was just over a year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago. Great. Thank you.
For the audience, can you tell them what OTIC is?
Sure. OTIC is Operational and Tactical Intelligence Center. It's essentially an area where we have real-time information about crimes that are going on, but we also have visual video feeds for some of our critical infrastructure and other locations, as well as intelligence that's driven based on our investigative units, that they're able to feed that information back into the deputies that are on patrol at the time that they're handling calls.
Excellent.
And then while we had schools not fully operational, we were able to take those SROs, keep them working, floating them into the core deputy team. So the core deputy team and Captain Brimlow, if you could just talk about what they did specifically.
Sure. During the time when school was not in session, we were supporting the schools with making sure that we were active with some of the youth with mentoring. Some of them had issues with technology. We were trying to help out in any ways that we could. Also, if you'll recall, we were doing feedings from the schools where our SROs were supporting those efforts to make sure that kids were getting the food that they needed during the time of COVID, as well as some families were also being fed there. And we were able to use that downtime to formulate and institute a couple of mentoring programs that were more individual basis, on a more individual basis, because we didn't have the opportunity to meet as groups because of COVID. So, but we were able to get several of those programs off the ground during that time.
Great, thank you. And then we did increase our staffing from 26 to 28 patrol deputies per day. So we didn't increase our overall allocation, but we moved some of the deputies who were responsible for other things onto the road to try to increase that patrol out there on the streets. And then we also increased the beach staffing from 1 zone to a 2-zone deputy system. So now there's 2 out there at each shift. We reconfigured some of our deputies also recently to the traffic enforcement. as we've seen an increase in that. That's a nationwide issue that we're seeing in terms of just the behaviors on the road. And we want to do what we can on our end and within our city limits to make sure that those out there know that there's no place for that here in the city of Deerfield Beach. Future considerations. Starting to see an increase in violent crimes in the surrounding jurisdictions around outside of the city, but around us. And as that kind of activity does sometimes bleed into our jurisdiction, it is a very high level, complex, long-term investigation when it comes to those specific crimes. So the crime suppression team does focus their efforts on that. And that's something that we just need to be aware of and cognizant of as we've seen some changes in behavior, I would say, as a result of the pandemic and a lot of the social isolation that has occurred because of it. We did talk about increasing staffing and just wanted to provide those numbers to you from downtown. It is $177,000 per deputy that we add to the force. We also want to work on enhancing our city infrastructure security. As of recently, Captain Brimlow has been touring our city facilities, and we've seen him around City Hall quite often, and they're analyzing, City Hall from perspective of safety and security, and they're making recommendations to us to enhance that in our facilities. And so we've definitely welcomed that. It's been very, very helpful in terms of our plans moving forward with the infrastructure. As well as we did talk about the integration of our camera system into the Operational Tactical Intelligence Center. And so that's been very helpful as well. Some things that I'm going to allow Captain Brimlow to talk about, which is the law enforcement response changes that we're seeing either just from a behavioral and social standpoint, but also possibly from a law perspective as well.
So there are several factors that are impacting how law enforcement will actually be practiced in the near future. The Department of Justice at the federal level has taken a pretty active role in looking at law enforcement agencies around the country to look at their practices and to assess the efficacy of practices at various organizations and various law enforcement agencies, as well as some of the more high-profile cases that we have seen where the Department of Justice is providing some oversight and scrutinizing some of the operations so that people can better handle how law enforcement is going to proceed from here. So a lot of that direction is going to start coming from the federal government. I believe tomorrow even President Biden is making a statement on what he sees in the future with the rise in gun violence. There are places overall around the country that saw a slight decrease in overall crime this last year, but in many places upwards 25% and higher increases in homicide rates. We have not seen that here in Deerfield Beach, but that is what we are up against around the country and where trends are going. The local issues also, we have seen increases with mental illness, homelessness. It's a bigger problem than I've ever seen it. And a lot of that originated during the COVID timeframe. Homeless shelters were closed, so there was no place to put homeless people. There was no place to get services for them. We have seen, as fire rescue would also attest, significant increases, over 30% increases in mental health calls with drug overdoses and suicides and Baker Acts and all of these kinds of mental health related issues. And a lot of those are part of the driving force of what our daily activities are operationally. They take a significant amount of time and resources to address those. And, we have to rely on other city, countywide agencies, state government agencies to assist us, especially when it comes to something like homelessness or other of these issues, in order to effectively address them. So a lot of these changes that are going to be coming up, I think, are as a result of the impact of COVID, what we've seen come from that, and also reaction to many of the high publicity issues that we've all seen in the news in recent times.
Additionally, one thing that we started to ramp up pre-COVID, but unfortunately we had to stop, was some of our community relation activities. So Walk the City getting the deputies, myself, the department heads out onto the streets, just simply walking them, having conversations with people in the community to address their needs and ask what it is that they are seeing out there. We did one, and it was very effective. It was very helpful. Got some great ideas out of it, made some really good contacts, but we can now go ahead and restart that. Now I think we're in a position where we can do that. Of course, we also want to see our core team getting a closer relationship with some of our service organizations, our nonprofits, our churches, starting to re-engage them, as well as starting back with some of the public events that law enforcement specifically does. And of course, partnering with us on our community events that we do. When it comes to public events, we're talking about things like the what do we call it when they bring their prescription drugs, the prescription drug buyback, drug drop off. Thank you, and turning in firearms and those types of events, which are really helpful in the community, shred-a-thons and those types of activities. So we're looking to increase those in the coming year as we move forward. From a law enforcement perspective, as we saw in the previous slide, the cost of a deputy, we're making a recommendation to increase the staffing by 4 positions, which would increase, it would be a 3% increase on personnel, or an approximate change on the contract of $700,000. Additionally, we're seeing very little change in operational costs and a decrease in our capital outlay. When we talk about capital outlay, 825,000 of it is vehicle replacement. We are on our last payment for our P25 radio system this year. That was a 3-year lease agreement or loan agreement that we had with Motorola. Also, we have replacement of some of the patrol mobile data computers, looking at the purchase of speed, camera, and message boards, equipment, transport trailers and golf carts that need to be replaced. The FLIR technology for nighttime operations that I'll allow the captain to talk about a little bit, and then additional investigative software and mobile devices.
Just as an example on the FLIR technology, a lot of the criminal activity, for example, drug sales, or even things like people trespassing on the beach or in the parks after hours, it's very difficult when all the lights are off, obviously, for us to be able to see the activity that's going on. That's where that technology would come in to assist us with that. And the same with some of the, like you see the speed camera message board. We have those things kind of individually, but we're looking for a way to get intelligence on the specific vehicles that are violating in a given area. Right now, you know, most technology will tell you, oh, there were a certain number of cars that traveled through there, and this was the average speed, and this was the high speed. We would like to know who was the high speed, which car was the one that was speeding, so that we can follow up on those, on that information, and perhaps curtail some of the driving problems that we're seeing.
That brings us to the conclusion of the law enforcement presentation. Happy to take any questions at this time.
Vice Mayor?
My first question is, how is it determined? 'Cause we see here that you want 4 deputy position. So how is that determined that you come up with 4 as opposed to 3, as opposed to 5?
So with the 4 deputies, what we have been doing is sort of an experimental trial run of late. And we have seen some benefits by having a second deputy over on the beach side, both because of calls for service, but also an officer safety issue. Typically, that is a single zone. So having a single deputy over there does create an officer safety issue in terms of having a backup respond if the bridge is up or what have you, that sort of thing. And we've also, because of the increase in the need for traffic enforcement, we have tried several different times, and it's been very successful, of allocating deputies to do specifically traffic enforcement, additional traffic enforcement. And those have been very successful. Just as an example, even today on Hillsboro Boulevard, as I was driving over here, those deputies that are out there, they are constantly writing citations. So that as they finish a citation, set back up, they're making another traffic stop, and they're making traffic stops of people in very high numbers of miles over the speed limit. And the fact that they're able to continuously do that means that the problem is not being solved yet, and that we still need to continue to address that problem aggressively and to continue to put our resources into those areas of traffic enforcement. It is even in some of our residential areas, they can sit at a stop sign, and a deputy, it takes 5 to 8 minutes to write a ticket, and they're still able to write 6, 8, 10 tickets in an hour. That's continuous. That means the moment that they're finished with person A, there goes person B. So we have to continue to address that. So this would allow us to permanently make sure that we're able to bolster those two concepts that we've been working with so far.
Thank you. My second question is, let's say you would go with the number of the 4 additional deputies. How is it that you evaluate their assimilation into your strategic plan?
The district itself is divided into patrol, investigations, and special operations, and traffic falls under special operations for us. So what we do is that the positions that are aligned into, say, traffic enforcement, they report to the traffic sergeant, who also handles our marine patrol and also the motor unit, those kinds of things, commercial vehicle enforcement. And he reports to one of our lieutenants. So there's always the alignment of mission through the lieutenant, all of the lieutenants report directly to me. So all of our mission is aligned through our commanders that are in the field.
How long does it take before you determine the effectiveness of it? Let's just say you put on 4 deputies and you were looking at them targeted in a specific category or area. How long is it before you actually determine the effectiveness of that? Hey, it worked out the way that we thought. It didn't work out the way that we thought. And if it's not working out the way that you thought, what do you do with those guys?
Well, if we have deputies that are not aligned with the mission in the district, we don't keep them. I mean, if there's somebody that is not able to perform, we simply don't keep them.
No, not that way. I mean, like, let's say they are performing. I mean, but like you're looking at them, let's say in traffic in a certain category, but after you evaluate it, you say, you know what, we didn't need that guy there or those 2 guys there. So what would you do with them at that point?
Oh, sure. Then they would be reallocated to other areas of our operation. So, for example, during the time we were able to do some of this testing phase during the time of COVID because crime significantly dropped. Over the last 2 years, crime has dropped over 30% in Deerfield Beach. So we were able to take some of the resources that we might have invested into the investigation side on the back end, and were able to test out whether it would benefit us to have additional traffic enforcement or additional deputies on the east side of the bridge. So COVID has allowed us that opportunity to actually test that out. When I say that deputies are writing tickets, say on the traffic side, for example, and they're writing them one after another, that's telling me that either people don't care that they're getting tickets, people have yet to receive the message that driving is unacceptable in Deerfield Beach, or that simply people are not going to abide by the rules and the laws. But the fact that they're able to do that tells me that problem is there, and I as the district commander have to continue to invest resources in that area.
Commissioner Hudak?
Thank you. And again, I'm sorry I missed most of your presentation. But I just want to touch on your last point, which is we have been throwing bodies at this traffic problem now for 2 years at least. And it doesn't seem to be changing the habits of the drivers. What other things can we do? And what other things, I don't know if it's the speed camera message boards, are you proposing that we do in order to get to the root cause of the issue, because the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results it seems to be what's happening here.
I agree. And I think the microphone went off. I agree. And there are, yes, you're correct that, we have to do some other items as well. So one of the things is, for example, the message board where we have an overlay of camera. And the whole point of that is for us to be able to make contact with people that are violating the law and to follow up on them and not just know that there was a person that violated the law. We want to know specifically when we're not able to be in a particular location. An additional procedure that we're putting in place is I've been working with the principal of the high school, and we will be actively involved with the youth starting in the fall at the high school with regard to their driver education programs. He's very excited to partner with us, and we will be educating them on a lot of the dangers of traffic violations, but also to be there upfront in dealing with them on what they need to know about proper driving and what they need to know about traffic stops, for example. And that crosses several lines, but it points towards traffic safety, but also to individual safety, so that the children that are in Deerfield Beach, the first time that they experience, say, a traffic stop doesn't happen at 1 o'clock in the morning on some side street, that we have that conversation in an open way with our youth in a safe environment where they can test out, if you will, what does that mean when they have a traffic stop. But it gives us a really good opportunity to reinforce traffic safety. That's not done anywhere right now. And we'll basically be one of the first to ever do that, is to really try and target our high school kids on a traffic safety program like that. It's got to be the youth. We have a lot of young people that are I say the culprits, but the offenders, if you will, of the traffic laws.
Well, these cars, I mean, my first car was a 74 Pinto, and you go past 50 and you start losing fillings.
Right.
Nowadays you got the these Chargers at 700 horsepower. I mean,
Yeah.
it's you got a challenge. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner, I almost called you Propelski. Commissioner Parnas.
I'll grow a beard. Few years back, before your time, we had an incident in my district where SWAT was called in. I was told then by Captain Snackenberg that once SWAT is in, the SWAT commander isn't totally in charge. Now, I take it that SWAT is not part of our contingency, but from the county. Am I correct?
It's made up of deputies from around the agency, mostly from a centralized area, but that's
Right.
correct.
Okay. Now, same thing if we needed a helicopter. Yesterday, people brought up the thing, well, are we getting bang for the buck when we send deputies somewhere else? Okay, do we get credit for it? I would like to think, as I've seen in my patrols with the police and my contact with them, that when there's an emergency, we get help. Nobody asks, wait a minute, I got to check my budget. If we're going to get paid to send SWAT, they send it. I would like to think if we really had an emergency, that you would ask for help and it would come without question. So I don't think looking or nitpicking at whether or not we lend deputies like at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. I know we sent some deputies there to help out. There's no price tag on an emergency. It's lives at stake. And I would like to think that Broward County Sheriff's Department helps us when we need it and we help them when they need it, and that it's a mutual thing.
So in the county, there's mutual aid agreements between all of the cities as well. And certainly something that you speak of for aviation, bomb squad, Marine Patrol. These are regional resources that all of the cities do use and they can avail themselves of. And it really is simply the district asking for those services with a justified reason, of course, but asking for those services for the incident that they're working. And even municipalities themselves, for example, not long ago, we had an incident that occurred in Coral Springs. And part of that could have spilled over into Deerfield. Coral Springs sent some officers over to Deerfield. Those are routine, very short detachments. They're here for a couple hours because of their case. We might do the same if we had an incident that was spilling over, say, into Coconut Creek across the bridge or something. So those kinds of things, those temporary resource allocations do happen. And also, if there were a major event like a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, you basically have every municipality here as well as outside the county that's going to be offering services for such a serious case as well.
Secondly, on the way here, there were very busy motorcycle police on Hillsboro Boulevard riding furiously, which I was happy to see because it can become congested with people weaving in and out and speeding, et cetera. I'm happy to see that. Another question is, I know that trucks are not allowed in certain residential areas. And I would like to point out Powerline Road and West Drive. I had heavy trucks this afternoon coming in Powerline, going the length of Century Village through the residential area. And there's a sign, no trucks.
Century Village was allowing
Yes.
them in?
Yes, and I'm upset about it because they shouldn't. The sign is very visible, no trucks in that entrance. And I see it violated constantly.
Interesting. I'm not sure why Century Village would allow,
So,
they're a
well,
private company.
if I can reel this in a little bit, that particular incident probably doesn't have much to do with the budget right now.
Okay.
So that's something you guys should definitely talk about.
Okay, we'll
offline.
talk about
Thank
that
you.
tomorrow.
Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you. The majority of my comments with respect to BSO were made last night, but the two specific questions I have with respect to this presentation are on page 4, the 177,000 per deputy. I just want to confirm that's all in. That's not the base salary, correct? Because
That's correct.
we have received asinine questions about this before, and I just want to make sure that we clarify that tonight, that that's all in.
That's correct. That's the cost of their training for the academy, their uniforms, all of that is included in that cost.
Okay. The
Their benefits, of course, personnel is like anywhere else, the most expensive part of any allocation for personal resources.
The second question I have, I'll direct to the city manager, is on page 5 of the presentation. We have the vehicle replacement, the trailer replacement, the golf cart replacement. When those are replaced, the value of the outgoing assets is not zero. So where's the credit for those? Where does that come back into the budget?
That's a great question, Commissioner, and that's part of the conversation that we talked about yesterday when we start to analyze these capital expenses. Let me answer your question specifically. The truth is, we don't have good visibility on that. We're paying for these through the consideration, right? And the asset belongs to the Broward Sheriff's Office. And so when those assets are reach their end of useful life, what the Broward Sheriff's Office does with them, I don't know. They probably auction them as we do with our own assets.
All the more reason to support my comments last night. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that care to comment on this portion of the budget workshop? Is there anyone online raising their hand? No? Okay. While we're waiting for that, with the 4 deputies, are we creating a new zone or are we just mixing them in, putting them in the mix of the existing zones that we have?
It's going to be integrated into what we have right now.
Okay. I would be curious to see how our zoning works out and where our deputies are at. And if they're floating, that's, I can understand that might be a little hard to point out, but I'd be curious. And I go back to over 12 years ago. I remember sitting as a citizen in budget hearings, and the big accomplishment for the city commission at the time was adding a new zone within the city. And at the time, the cost of a deputy was approximately $150,000. So it hasn't gone up that much in over 12 years. So and that's not too bad, quite frankly. The license plate reader program that we started in Little Harbor, do we have an update on how that's gone?
So there, in the very beginning, we had been trying to work with the county on using county infrastructure to save the city money and to actually make the program a little bit more expansive. Since then, we have been not very successful in convincing the county to allow us to leverage their infrastructure. So we've gone with other infrastructure and private infrastructure that we're using as well as paying for our own. And that has been the way that we've had to do it. A lot of delay was because of that. If we look at some of the surrounding counties, other counties in the state, they have allowed law enforcement to use their infrastructure for license plate reader technology, but that as of yet is still a pending issue in Broward County. So
If I could elaborate.
Yep.
So he's absolutely correct. You, in other counties around this state, you can enter.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I'm totally aware of that. Is that license plate reader in place and are we using it right now?
we are using license plate reader technology. Yes.
In Little Harbor?
Yes.
Okay, so we are using that. Has
Yes.
that been successful? Is it working? Are we?
Yes. And you know, we have it in other places too, and it's working in several locations.
Right.
Yes.
And as far as to your point, and I'm not trying to be rude, gentlemen, but aware of the issue.
Sure.
Understand that the county is being non-cooperative. I don't need a history lesson of what we've done there, but we should probably talk to our county commissioners a little bit more. And public embarrassment also is a very helpful tool when trying to get that done. So I have no problem doing that the next time we have them over here during our parades, asking why the county can't be more cooperative. But I'm going to recommend looking at expanding license plate readers. If we've had it there, we put it there. There are areas in the city that have limited entrances and exits that can be, we've done our prototype. Let's see where we can expand it. And I don't see that in the budget here.
I will tell you this, we also have been working, we've used some of our resources. We have some private entities in the city that have limited ingress and egress that are also installing license plate reader technology to cooperate with us, much in the same way that overview cameras, regular cameras are being installed. There are places that we also have license plate readers being installed privately.
Privately.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go beyond the private portion of it.
Because of the way the expense is, I would think that's a legitimate LETF expense for
Okay, so that's
consideration.
where it could potentially come out rather than in this budget.
That would be
Okay,
my recommendation.
excellent. Previously, we talked about shot spotter. Is that not something we would, I see it not in here. Is that just a technology you guys are looking into to potentially use?
It is one that I believe has already been approved by the state legislature for a certain allocation in Deerfield Beach. So it's not something that's going to be necessary to put into our budget.
I like that. Good. Perfect. Those-
And Mayor, I just have to confirm that we did receive funding on that from our Director of Legislative and Community Affairs. I'm not sure that we did get that allocation, but I'm,
think Lamar said we did.
well, let me just double check on that answer for
Okay,
you.
thank you. Anyone from the public?
We have Gwen Clark Reed and Katie Freitag.
Okay. Ms. Clark Reed?
Thank you, Mayor. My question, one of them has been answered because I wanted to know about the shots fired detectors, have they been expanded and were they going to be expanded? And I guess since we got the funding, that will happen. A suggestion maybe with the speeders in our community. I only see the message boards are very good, but can we get them done in other languages? Because it's, I think that possibly that would be helpful if we could do that in the city. And also the community service offices, community liaison offices. I'm sorry, I might have missed that portion, but are they still in the budget? And is those positions still there?
Yes, there are 4 allocated positions for community liaisons.
Okay, the question about the message boards, is that possible?
I took a note on that. We'll have to check and see. We want to make sure that we have the right translations of the messages. I don't think that necessarily there's any issue with it because it's all, Arabic letters. So I think that it's doable. It's a matter of making sure that the right message gets on the boards. But that's an interesting idea. I'm going to take back to my staff as well.
Mental health, are we getting any offices that really are involved in mental health in Deerfield?
So all of the deputies are trained with basically it's a CIT training is what it is, which is a basic understanding of current trends in mental health. But none of the deputies, unless they have it from an outside source, are mental health experts. There's a lot on the plate of the deputy trying to keep up with case law and statutory laws just in that alone, and all of the rigorous training that they have a year. Most of our deputies have in excess of 40 hours to 60 hours a year of training that they have to go to, but they're not mental health experts. So that is a resource that we rely on from the county to assist us with any kinds of issues that we come upon in the community. But we're not the primary mental health providers in that way.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Freitag? Ms. Freitag?
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone this evening?
Go ahead.
Katie Fartog, 418 Southeast 2nd Street. 2 different things that I want to discuss. One of them is the issue with speeding. As you guys are aware, there was a very bad accident on Hillsboro right in front of Little Harbor yesterday that I can't believe the driver was able to walk away from. Street speeding. There was another incident on Friday. Luckily, there happened to be an off-duty police officer. I do apologize. On Thursday, there happened to be an off-duty police officer right in front of where a specific speeder decided to do a burnout, spin out, almost took a tree out, and then pull on to Federal, where he proceeded to do 120 miles an hour.
Ms. Freitag, you're using up your minutes to talk about incidents. Do you have something?
No, I was just going to say this officer, even though he was off duty, did flag down and stop the speeder and cite him and gave him a very large fine. I do appreciate the fact that that is going on. We need more of that. What we also need more of is input into what is going on downtown. We have great officers that form bonds in our relationships in our community, and the next minute, due to politics, they get removed from our city and get sent on to another city. It was brought up when we were discussing the renewal of the contract, and it needs to be discussed in more detail. The city needs to have more say as to the officers that are assigned to our city and what position they're in, how long they're in that position, and we should not continue to be the soundboard, the diving board for everybody to start here. We get them trained and then they move on to another city. That is something that we need to address as a city and get some further details from BSO downtown, from Sheriff Tony, and see how we can make it work better in our favor instead of just paying all the salaries and not having any say as to what is going on. That is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to close it to the public. Any comments?
Just to confirm the shot spotter situation. So that was recommended by Congressman Deutsch at the federal level, but not yet approved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next. Thank you, Chief. Go ahead.
Chief, just before you go, Um, I'm always amenable to, current technology that will help with areas that where gun violence, just people shooting guns, is pretty prevalent. And in my district, that happens a lot, as you well know. But I don't think that we just should do something just to do it because it sounds good. Now, some of the things that I have read about shot spotters and talking to people, it actually questions its effectiveness. Have you heard that?
I have, and I think that the issues that surround that, we would need to develop very specific and targeted responses and plans to roll that out into the community. Because there are legitimate concerns. Just as an example, there are some that might say that Shot Spotter would deter people from calling 911, whereas we want people to call 911 irrespective of the presence of Shot Spotter. So those kinds of things might be educational, might be part of the rollout if that were to take place, and to ensure that the community is completely on board with what's happening, that it's not merely technology for the sake of technology or just a waste of taxpayer dollars, even if it's not coming from city coffers. So I think that is important to address and be sure that if that is taking place, that we roll that out properly. And that needs to be a process and not just installing something and turning the switch on.
Thank you.
Thank you. You got it.
Ms. Good, can you confirm that I'm still sharing screen? I'm not. Thank you. Moving on to fire rescue, some of the achievements that we've seen in fire rescue this year are, in spite of not being able to enter many facilities and businesses during this year, we will get to 70% completion on our annual fire inspections and fire reviews. So that's darn good in my opinion with how long they were not able to go inside businesses. However, I look at the outside activity and the fire hydrant testing, and that is that is 100% annual completion on all of those assets. From a public education standpoint, they were still able to do a lot of their programs, the Stop the Bleed in all schools, the Ready Now program, junior fire starters, car seat program, CPR, and senior services education, school safety inspections were all 100% complete as they pivoted to Zoom technology. The distribution of the P25 radios to all frontline personnel is complete. They still have 40 radios pending, but all the frontline personnel have them right now. The P25 alerting system was a big topic of discussion for us in the budget season last year. 3 of the 6 stations are installed with three underway. So as soon as Fire Station 51, which is the one that we're getting from the development agreement, that station is coming along very well. I think we'll probably have that station complete within the next 4 to 6 months is my guess. And we're also replacing the trailer. The trailer is that's Fire Station 111 sitting there on the Goolsby site. That is scheduled to come in September. So despite the COVID staffing shortages, which law enforcement and fire rescue both had significant impacts on, we did have no disruptions in the level of service provided by BSO Fire Rescue. So future considerations, one is a public safety master plan for capital replacement, and that is something that you'll see later on tonight. New stock requirements for personal protective equipment and medical supplies are new requirements due to the increased usage and the increased protocols related to COVID. And they've also seen a significant increase in costs and usage of their supplies. Material costs in some cases have increased 125%, and the usage increase has increased dramatically as well. I don't have those numbers. I know I'd asked for them, but I don't think I've had them at the time of this presentation, but it's it's significant. Not only is it from a COVID perspective, but the calls for services have increased substantially as well. And so what are we seeing out there? Just in line with what we heard from law enforcement, an increase in trauma-related calls related to drug overdoses and traffic accidents. That's where we're seeing the increases. This represents the consideration request from the Broward Sheriff's Office Fire Rescue Department this year. The personnel services is a 2% increase, or just a little bit over 500,000. On the operations side, it is a 5% increase. And on the capital outlay request, it is a $537,000 increase over the FY21 budget. Still pretty low in comparison to what we've seen in other years, because we do not have a large capital replacement program or request for this specific year. And so we're not seeing any engines or any rescues. We've done a really good job with that in our previous years, and we're in really good shape right now with that. But we do have a soft fleet vehicle replacement at 45,000. New furniture, fixtures, and equipment that we will need to outfit the new Fire Station 51, bunker gear and dryer and fire hose equipment, as well as some minor tools and equipment replacement, which make up the majority of the capital budget.
I have a question. The last page you have here, it says 217,204. We go to the previous page and it says 203,784. The capital outlay. Am I reading it wrong?
You are not. As of, I think it was Thursday, Monday, Friday evening, we had some revisions to the consideration because it was higher than I would have liked. So I did work with Chief Pelletieri and downtown to make the revisions to get the consideration lower than where it was originally proposed to me. And so I see that we did not capture those expenses, those cost reductions, which probably came from tool equipment replacement. But the slide here, and I apologize for that, this represents the consideration that we'll be receiving from them. The revised consideration that we'll be receiving from them from their May 1st, first submittal.
All right, that's all right. Commission? Yes. Yes. Vice Mayor.
We know that the drug overdoses are going up, and I'm just wondering, are we addressing the drug overdose issue, that pandemic in itself, beyond fire rescue? In other words, there are places where people in the lay public have Narcan and they administer it because, you know, the overdose volume is so high that you have people beyond the fire department. Do we have anything like that?
Currently, the DLE, the law enforcement, does carry Narcan, and they're able to, on first response, treat them initially through what we've a device to an inhaler, if you will. And then we come in and we will do more aggressive treatment for those overdoses. But right away, law enforcement is definitely a large impact on help on the turnaround of those overdoses.
Is Narcan, is that pretty high? Is that medication that's very expensive?
Very expensive. Just as a point, I mean, they can range on a treatment anywhere from $700 to $1,200 to $1,600 on a drug overdose. And sadly, I'll just share this statistic with you. Here in Deerfield Beach, we are the highest in Broward County. The next closest city is 200 and some odd behind us. So
I can tell you this.
We have a large impact to the service with drug overdoses.
It works.
Mhm.
It works.
The medication works.
It works. And they need it.
Commissioner Hudak?
So if we're so far ahead of everybody else, what are we doing as far as a preventative education or community outreach? what kind of things are we doing, or what can we do as a city, as law enforcement, as fire rescue, to try and educate our residents and hopefully bring these incidences down, whether it's mental health support, as we talked previously, maybe, we do need to have a mental health officer here that can be a community liaison or something, because this is pretty sad.
So if I may answer that, Commissioner, if they're getting to fire rescue, it's too late. So it's really comes down to the educational component, the training component, the resources, the support services that we provide to the community in order to get them either out of drug addiction or prevent them from getting into drug addiction. And so that's, again, part of the reason why I'm looking at the development of community services to really concentrate on the needs of the community, especially as it relates to these increases that we've seen in issues like mental health, drug addiction, and social issues.
And one more question, if I may. We have a lot of halfway homes here. We have a lot of substance abuse outplacement. Are they contributing to our high numbers, or is most of this, the private citizens, the residents?
I can say that if there's multiple organizations here that do a phenomenal job, but sometimes you can't control the relapse of a person that really wants to get out and find it. So sometimes we run into those scenarios, or if they're internal, they do treat them as well on site, and we will transport them from those locations. So I can't tell you for sure where they're originating from, but if there's personnel that get out that are looking to either find their way back into it, it's accessible.
Yes, Commissioner.
I don't see anything here about new fire stations. Is that in another section? Or should that be in this section?
So Commissioner, we did address it here as a future consideration, but you will see that fire station master planning in another presentation.
Fine, thank you.
Yes.
Just one question, and it's for emphasis only because I know the answer. With respect to the capital outlay, same question as for fire as with respect to law enforcement. Same question with respect to the replacement and the recapture. Same answer?
Different answer with fire rescue, actually, because the contract's written a little bit differently. The original contract was written that we maintain ownership of the engines and the rescues. So when they do decommission the engines and the rescues, they do come back to the city and we do auction those off. When it comes to the soft fleet, which would be the pickup trucks and those sorts of things, those are in the consideration and are ownership by BSO. So same situation in that case.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's correct.
Just as a quick follow-up, sorry.
Mhm.
We decommissioned 6 vehicles this year with the purchasing of the vehicles we bought from last year. And I think they went pretty well in the auction with a decent value from what I'm understanding. So but we had a total of 6 this past year.
But those are the ones that came, just for clarification, the ones that came back to the city, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Is there anyone from the public that care to comment on this portion? Anyone, Madam Clerk? Yes, Ms. Clark Reed, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is around the drug addiction and the overdoses. How many facilities do we have in the city of Deerfield Beach that are designated, registered as halfway houses or drug rehabilitation facilities?
I don't know if we have that number. Do you have any other questions on those along those lines before we get the answers for you?
And I was just concerned as to the drug overdoses. Were they did they appear to be because of the COVID issue that we have, the pandemic? Are most of them now related to that? I wanted to know if that number, meant that we had mental health issues that needed to be addressed around the COVID that caused the overdose.
Thank you. Chief?
Yes. What has happened is over the past year with the pandemic, we did see a 28% increase in our drug overdose call volume. Also, as a side note as well, when our high trauma acuity calls, we saw a 15% increase from last year as well. And sadly, again, we are number one in Broward County with traumatic calls as well. So these could coincide with what we've dealt with the past year. And but we don't do a lot of follow-up at that point, because usually the patients, once we deliver them to the receiving facilities, we don't really find out the causes or what potentially had happened. But we did see an extraordinary increase in both those disciplines.
And as far as the number of rehabs, I don't know if we have that number, but I don't think we've had a new one in at least 6 years. In the
That's
city.
right. That's pretty accurate. And there's a lot of people that run privately out of their homes, so it's hard to chase some of these down.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? I'm going to close it to the public. No. Thank you.
Okay, in Ocean Rescue, some of the achievements they've seen this year is they've established a critical incident stress debriefing team for their staff, which is a tremendous effort on Chief Brown's has done. So when they have these traumatic events and emergency situations, they now have protocols in place that they have worked with actually the Broward Sheriff's Office fire rescue staff on. So they've also created an educational video to share with local hotels and tourists about safety and hazards specifically related to the beach, so that our visitors who may not be used to swimming or being in the ocean can be more educated. They're also, again, as we talked recently at the last commission meeting, we're a Beach Patrol of the Year for the second time in 2 years. For future considerations, there is a bipartisan bill in Congress that would make daylight savings and the new permanent standard. If that is done, we would need to have a discussion about having our lifeguards operate in daylight savings hours permanently. Currently, we do that. Chief Brown, if you could tell me the times in which we do that.
Currently, we have towers 1 through 4 of our 9 towers from March, when daylight savings changes, through the end of July.
Additionally, talking about ocean rescue infrastructure, headquarters is certainly part of the conversation when we talk about the public safety master planning and the lifeguard towers too. That is something that we've wanted to bring forward for quite some time. We've had the design approved, and that is another item that you will see in the budget as well. And that would be first to add a lifeguard tower at the north end, where the volume has increased. And so we believe we need an extra tower down there at the north end. And then we can, through the years, go ahead and replace the ones moving south. Also, we need to just be aware of some of the environmental issues that impact our beach quality. We've seen red tide for the first time in a very long time, I think just last year. Increase of seaweed washing up and sea level rise. This is all related to environmental activity out there and things that just affect the quality of the beach that in some cases we have no control over. So in their budget this year, there was a request to change some titles just to align them better with what other ocean rescue operations have out there. It helps with recruiting, it helps with retention. And so we would just change the title of from lieutenants to captains and specialists to lieutenants. And again, the reason for that is to align them with what the profession typically has out there. The second one would be to unfreeze 2 full-time ocean lifeguard positions. And this is needed certainly now because of the new tower. If we had that, we would need to unfreeze these 2 positions that we had frozen due to the budget cuts that we did last year.
Chief, do you have enough with this? If we were to add these positions, that give you enough to cover the beach and do what you need to do?
Absolutely.
Okay. Where does the tower and where does the fire stations, where does that appear in the budget presentation?
That is, you're going to see that in the environmental services presentation under, because it falls under construction and facilities management.
Okay. So all of these different departments are going to fall underneath there when we have capital outlays.
The expenditure will.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question is, who makes up the critical incident stress debriefing team? Who's that made up of?
It will be myself and all of my supervisors, and we will be trained by our Employees Assistance Program. We're going through training as we speak. We have our first one in July.
Okay. Now, I just want my colleagues to know that, all the things that I see here referencing their achievement, there is none greater than this. Because what do you do with an employee or lifeguard person who just witnessed a drowning? What do you do with them? Do you put them back on the tower and let them go back? This is why this is so important. This is huge. So my next question is that, do you have a plan of expansion for this?
I believe just getting it in place, as you spoke of, I personally went through that in my career before becoming a supervisor. We had a gentleman who was scuba diving, get struck by lightning. We performed CPR on this gentleman. We had his wife crying over our shoulder, and I was trying to clear an entire beach at the same time for lightning and had to go right back to the tower. So it does affect people,
Absolutely.
especially in the day and age that we live in right now, what we went through with COVID, trying to keep our beaches safe and some of the verbal abuse and other things that go on. It's become a lot highly more stressful job. So when we do have a traumatic event like this, I feel this is very good, at least to get them to decompress, not put them right back on the tower.
Absolutely. I just would like to see, as the team is put in place, that there is an absolute plan to expand that as far as education is concerned, training, because that is a huge part of complete development and oftentimes it is just pushed aside. In the old days, when I was in the fire department, it was be tough. You have to deal with those sort of things. And you go back to the station after witnessing something that was just absolutely horrific. And the only debriefing that you get is from yourself. And that's not good. And you can't trust that, because those photographs stays in your head and they don't go away. And so I would like to see this. You established a critical incident stress debriefing team. I'd like to see you expand on that as well.
I will. I'll keep you informed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner, anything else? No. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, before you leave, is there anyone from the public that care to comment on this section? I don't see anyone. You have anybody? Close to the public. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Well, next we'll continue with this Department of Active Aging. Ms. Donna DeFranzo will be joining us via Zoom for this. Samantha, just confirm to me when she's on, please.
Good evening.
Thank you. Some of the FY21 achievements include securing funding from the county for both the DBE 1 and 2, which is the Saturday route transit. They've also implemented several new technologies to still interact with their participants in a virtual environment. So they've got the senior technology program called It's Never Too Late tablets, which they provide tablets to their participants, and the Uniper program via home televisions. Mr. Franjo, you want to talk a little bit about what that program is, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave. Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. Project Vital, which is really technology, vital inclusive technology for all, has allowed the seniors for us to be able to mitigate their social isolation and loneliness by utilizing tablets that have music, that have activities, fitness programs. Of course, once they've been trained on the tablets, to be able to engage with our recreation coordinator and with other individuals via the technology. And then those that do not have the capabilities, computer capabilities, the Uniper programs allows them to use their remote along with their own TV at home to engage in different types of recreation and fitness type educational, health educational programs. For those primarily the seniors as well as family caregivers living with their loved ones with Alzheimer's disease to be able to engage remotely into virtual programs. So it's been a wonderful partnership with the Department of Elder Affairs, the Alzheimer's Association, and the Area Agency on Aging.
Thank you. Additionally, the Center for Active Aging was our call center during COVID-19 when vaccinations came around. And so they were assisting residents with information about vaccines, how to schedule appointments, assistance with scheduling those appointments, as well as offering transportation to vaccination centers if they could not get there. They held pop-up vaccination sites in partnership with the Department of Health. We also replaced 2 buses courtesy of Broward County, meaning the county provided those to us at no cost. They held virtual, for the first time ever, a virtual auxiliary fashion show with the CASA board. And they also assisted them with the establishment of a new website. Just want to provide some additional achievements just to kind of show, and I'm not going to read through these, but even with the center being closed, these are the numbers of the service delivery that was provided by the Center for Active Aging during the course of the pandemic so far.
So is this the counter when we hear people make silly arguments saying that only 45 people use our active aging center?
Absolutely, Mayor.
Okay, shows true ignorance. I think it's good to bring this up. Thank you.
For future considerations, just service delivery method, to continue the hybrid services that for programs for senior, both virtual and on site. We think that that's probably going to be something that catches on. We want to have the ability to do that. We're going to be implementing new software called My Senior Center. Mr. Franzo, can you just talk a little bit about the benefits of that software?
Absolutely. As we continue to move into the technology framework, the My Senior Center technology will allow individuals to register via their phone, will allow us to track the numbers of who we're actually serving. And then on site, there'll be kiosks, touch screen kiosks for them to register for classes, as well as to see what's on the calendar of events, whether they want to do it virtually or whether they want to do it on site. And as we continue to do joint partnership recreation activities with Parks and Rec at some of the other community centers throughout the city, it'll allow them to register and see if there's even openings for a particular class. So it's just another, way for us to engage in technology for our reporting, as well as to make it easier for the senior of all ages to be able to engage with activities and programming and decide what they would like to do as it relates to choices.
Thank you. We also are establishing a plan for continuity of operations during construction. We're currently doing that with the design build firm that we have chosen, so we can maintain the operations and the programs throughout the course of construction. As we say this every year, the potential for federal, state, and county funding cuts, that's always a threat to us when it comes to the active aging. And then collaboration integration with Parks and Recreation and Legislative and Community Affairs, referencing the idea of community services. There are several divisions in active aging, so this is a summary of the department in its entirety. Going into the admin division, the recommendation is to unfreeze 2 positions that we froze that were vacant at the time of the current year's budget. And that would be the part-time office assistants. 30% of the salary comes out of this particular division, and unfreezing of the grants coordinator. Again, most of the changes that we'd be looking to make in the Center for Active Aging division would be the unfreezing of current vacant positions, getting the services back online, 35% of that previous part-time office assistant that you just saw, the information and referral coordinator, 75% allocation out of this division, the health support manager, that actually is a position that we would downgrade if we did the community services department, and the unfreezing of the recreational coordinator, which again, that one would be a retitle if we had the community services. Last portion of the part-time office assistant, unfreezing the information and referral coordinator, as well as the other allocation for the health and support manager. In the transportation department, there is, again, the information referral coordinator, and then some changes that we'd like to see in the bus drivers. Now that we have the Saturday routes, and we have a very hard time filling part-time positions for our bus drivers, and it definitely causes it causes a lot of stress on this particular division to maintain the level of service that we need, not only for the community bus shuttle, but for all the operations that they provide. We make the recommendation to unfreeze the one full-time bus driver position and eliminate the 4 frozen part-time bus driver positions to replace those with 2 full-time bus drivers. That recommendation is coming from the department in order to meet the demand of the transportation needs.
Commission.
Quick question. What about the daycare? Is that part of this budget or another budget?
That's an excellent question, Commissioner. Since we'll still be in construction
Okay.
for the course of this year, we would forego the daycare for 1 more year and then bring that back online when the new building is open.
Go ahead.
Donna, can you hear me?
Yes, Commissioner Panes.
I would propose, and I intend to propose, that we initiate a committee of seniors from all over the city for 2 reasons. One, to coordinate and educate the seniors throughout the city of what's available. I would like the committee to plan events all over the city other than just the Focal Point Center. And would you be amenable to participate with such a committee to spread the word and to do things all over the city?
Absolutely. And I know that you want a senior parade.
Well, I'll take it up with Dave, but I would like to see a committee formed and I'd like you to be part of it.
I would.
It would be my honor.
And I think that's something that we can look at. I think some of the changes that we're looking to make would lend itself for an internal committee to assist us with putting recreational programs throughout the city.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public? Okay, I'll close it to the public. Oh, thank you, Gwen. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. My question to Mr. Fonzio is about the mental health provider. Is there a mental health provider somewhere in this unfreezing of these positions? Because I didn't see, or hear anything about the mental health. And the mental health of our seniors is very, very important.
Absolutely. We have an excellent licensed mental health counselor. Her name is Kelly, and she's been extremely busy this past year. Fortunately, she's been able to participate in either Zoom support groups with the participants, as well as teleconferences, which has really been a lifeline for the seniors, especially those that are home alone. So we do have 1 licensed mental health counselor, the information referral coordinator that Dave referenced, which we'd like to probably change that to a social services coordinator, just a name title change. would also have that background in social work. And then our case manager in the Alzheimer's Daycare Center is a bachelor's level social worker. So you're absolutely correct. It has been a lifesaver. We also work with Henderson Mental Health as well as the suicide prevention and South Florida Aging Institute. But we are fortunate to have an excellent licensed mental health counselor.
Follow-up question, Mayor. Do you think that one counselor is sufficient for the city of Deerfield Beach?
Mr. Franz, I'm happy to answer that. As you heard, Ms. Clark-Reed, there are several resources throughout the department that provide those services. So I think she actually mentioned 3 or 4 positions that actually provide that service. Really where I believe as a city we need to focus in on is partnerships with nonprofits and other organizations who provide the services as well. And so that's where the information referral coordinator, or if we move forward with some recommendations, what the social services coordinator would assist us with is establishing or growing those partnerships. So the resources that are out there, as a city alone can not do this. This is just like it is to raise a child. This is going to take many resources in order to accomplish this task.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? I'll close it to the public.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to Legislative and Community Affairs with our Acting Director, Jonathan Salas. Wonderful achievements out of this department this year. They have assisted with the award of $2.5 million in grants, with $3.9 million pending currently, $1 million in entitlement grants, $250,000 from the state of Florida appropriations that he works very closely with our lobbyists on. And we have federal appropriations in the amount of $20 million currently pending. From the housing perspective, they've had purchase assistance with 6 homeowners, 13 home repair program or projects have been completed, with 10 currently under construction, 33 households and mortgage assistance, 132 in rental assistance, and 72 in utility assistance as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. They've assisted over 6,500 families through food distribution. And this is not just an effort by Legislative and Community Affairs, although Jonathan was the main coordinator with our volunteers and our staff, but Parks and Recreation and every department in the city responded and participated in those food distributions. And I do want that to be duly noted, as this was a citywide effort, as well as the Broward Sheriff's Office. Other goals completed was they implemented the Neighborly software for electronics grants management. This is a system that assists our community members, our residents who are who are looking for assistance. It's an electronic submission, and it's worked out really well in terms of efficiencies for the department. Also, they facilitated the CARES Act funding reimbursement. If you remember, we had 45 days from the time we received that funding to spend as much as we could, and it fell on their shoulders, and they did a tremendous job. Future considerations is, and we will have these conversations, the American Recovery Plan grant management. We've established the fund. We just recently received our first funding for this year on that. We've provided the project submission from the departments to our consultant. They are reviewing those now. I meet with them in a couple weeks here in July, and we will be going through those for eligibility and then providing them to the City Commission for consideration. Long-term impacts of COVID-19 on childhood, education, poverty, mental health, and addiction has already been covered several times in several presentations. And the threat or the reduction and elimination of some of the funding that we see to our community in CDBG, home, and SHIP, again, sort of like active aging, is always a threat to us. Also, our workforce housing inventory. It's something that Jonathan and I have spoken about on several occasions, and how we can increase our workforce housing in the city is important as we look at some of the businesses who are asking for that. As an example, Broward Health has had conversations with us about, bringing in workforce housing into the community to support the staff that they have, their nurses, their administration, those sorts of things. Even the doctors, some of the newer doctors are looking for workforce housing, as I'm sure they pay off those large loan debts. Looking at the budget for legislative and community affairs, in terms of personnel, we would be requesting a reclassification of a grants writer to a grants manager. The simple fact is this person no longer just write grants. They provide grants management to the entire city, and the amount of grants that we are seeking now and that I am asking them to seek has expanded quite significantly. And so this position simply just has outgrown their current duties. This is a recommendation, regardless of the creation of community services, that I would be seeking. Additionally, we want to re-implement a lot of our there has got to be a mistake here on the FY22 budget. This is actually 67,500, and I apologize for that. But we want to get back to the level of participation that we had in previous years. So the educational support programs of 32,500. We want to do the day of service and public awareness and engagement, increase those. Jonathan, can you speak a little bit about those programs and what they bring to the community?
Absolutely. So with those programs, we're looking to do a school supply drive. We partner with economic development, which we do a career and resource fair each year. We were looking at implementing a symposium for our teens for mental health and suicide prevention throughout the summer months. These funds will help with the book and the toy drive that we do each year. We do a bike giveaway during the holiday season. We partner with the schools for J-Biz Town. We also wanted to look at introducing block parties this year as a way of bringing the community together. See if we can have parties in different districts or different neighborhoods so that we can bring all the community together and talk about the resources that we have available and the programming that we have throughout the city.
Also like to discuss the community participation budget submission that we have received. This is what we've received from our local nonprofit organizations for this fiscal year. So where we go from here is just the same way we did last year. We established a committee to review these, make recommendations, bring that forward to the City Commission for further consideration. That is it.
Okay. Commissioner Grosky.
This presentation was very heavy on the community affairs, but let's not lose sight of the legislative affairs, because that's where we're going to get a lot of dollars to support these programs that we're talking about. And I am when we talk about the vision, I am a huge proponent of the City of Deerfield Beach being involved in the various events locally and also on the state and national level as well. We're talking about Broward Days in Tallahassee and the fast fly-ins through the National League of Cities in Washington. Those are events that this commission has attended in the past. And I want to continue that trend, because when Deerfield Beach shows up, people recognize that. You don't get a seat at the table if you're not there. And we constantly have to be attending these events. I don't know if that's a part of this budget or where it falls into, but we do not need to let our foot off the pedal. We need to press it harder, actually, and be more engaged on the county, state, and national levels, because it is paying dividends. I've seen it myself. And also we need to advertise, wherever possible to promote ourselves. No one's going to promote Deerfield Beach better than Deerfield Beach. And one example is I got an invitation today, actually, for the mayor's gala later this year. And they always have a program. And when I was first elected, when I would go to these events and you'd have the programs, whatever, you had all these other cities that would advertise in there. Deerfield or Pompano Beach congratulates so-and-so, and Weston congratulates so-and-so. And Deerfield Beach was never in there, never. That's when I was first elected. And now we've started to do that. And I want to keep that trend up because believe it or not, people notice, people keep track. And we need to be a player in the county. And I'm a huge proponent of that. Just if you show up, it will pay dividends. I think, people look to Deerfield Beach now instead of us looking to them. And I want to keep that trend. So whether it falls in this department, the legislative affairs or not, I found the opportunity to make that comment. As far as my vision going forward, is that something that we definitely need to stay in tune and not lose focus of that, because those will pay dividends with respect to grants, with respect to funding from county and state projects and national projects as well. So that's something I want to keep the focus on going forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Hudak?
I just want to piggyback off of that. I have seen the benefits of making sure that we're out there and about, and it is extremely important. I agree with everything that Commissioner Drosky said. So I want to make sure, the last year, everything is stopped. And we had some great momentum going into 2020, and we need to pick that back up again. So please pay attention to that. I think that's extremely important. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
So what is the true amount being requested?
$67.
On the operational side, it's 67,500. It's a net change of $36,540 or 118%. But really, I'd ask that the barometer on these presentations be looked at from an FY19 and an FY20 perspective, because as we know, we drastically reduced budgets across the board in FY21.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone from the public here to comment on this? Go ahead, Ms. Clark-Reed. Go ahead, Ms. Clark-Reed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask about the American Recovery Plan. When will the community be able to review this plan and possibly make some suggestions, or do we have that provision with this plan?
Again, we are reviewing the submission of potential projects and programs that have been submitted by staff. They are being reviewed by our consultancy for compliancy with the American Recovery Plan Act. Once we complete that exercise and I meet with them later in July, we'll be bringing that forward to City Commission for their consideration.
But you didn't answer my question about the public input.
We were happy to have public input into that at the whenever we do that at the commission meeting. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, because prior to the commission meeting, we would be able to see it then.
Correct.
Okay. My next question is about, have you ever given thought to a mobile van for community service, community affairs? Has any thought been given to that in getting out to the community with information and whatever it is that you want to get the residents to know?
No. Are you suggesting it?
I'm suggesting, yes, I am suggesting that maybe we need to look at a mobile van for the city of Deerfield Beach to be able to get really into the communities and into those areas where you know there's a need, but folks can't get out to you. So I'm suggesting that a mobile van be looked at for the city of Deerfield Beach. And Commissioner Drosky, you are right on point about legislative affairs. You know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And we need to be really out there and in front. And particularly with your new position of, looking forward to you becoming president of the Broward League of Cities. So we definitely need to be visible. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Anyone else for the public? I'll close it to the public then. I'm sure Commissioner Drosky will keep us very oily here in the city, but it is a great point, and nobody knows it better than actually Gwen Clark-Reed, because she's seen it from all sides. So it's interesting perspective. I'm gonna warn everybody, we're at the halfway point of how long this meeting's supposed to be. If you have yet to make your presentation, I'm going to suggest you go through and you double check your numbers that are here, because I don't want to see another typo in these presentations. Quite frankly, it sounds minor, but it's embarrassing. I don't want to see it again. We spent enough time on this. There's been enough time put into it. These numbers should be correct from the presented before us. I do have a question regarding legislative affairs and the new proposal of putting it under emergency management, and why we feel that's a good place to put it. Did I misunderstand that, or was that one of the categories in which it would fall in the new emergency management position?
That's incorrect. Emergency management position would fall under the Office of Public Safety.
Right, but would legislative affairs fall under the emergency management?
No, it would not.
It would not. Okay, my mistake. Thank you for correcting me. Okay. Is that it? Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Next, we'll move on to Parks and Recreation. Some of the achievements with Parks and Recreation this year is they really led the way with some of the innovative operations that they had throughout the pandemic. Not many were doing what we did here in the city of Deerfield Beach, operating summer camps, after school care programs, reopening our pool at the time that we did, as well as some of the outdoor athletic programming that we also had. We did our winter soccer, spring flag football, which exceeded the maximum registration numbers that we're able to have, and so they exceeded capacity there. We provided digital program during the COVID for our dolphin swim team, and our summer camp operated at a 9-to-1 ratio, utilizing just city staff and no summer hires. They integrated a new system recreation software, which is a Civic Rec. It's a more user-friendly registration system, and it provides a cost savings to the city in the amount of $10,000 annually. It fast tracks waivers for events. It also allows for like a ticket master type of registration if we ever have a seating event, which is could come in handy. The Arboretum Phase 2 reopening, which was a phenomenal grand opening that we had just recently, with heavy involvement from our Parks and Recreation maintenance staff. We also held 8 citywide COVID-safe events during this year, to include Pioneer Days, the Pop-Up Art Festival, Night of Lights Fall Festival, Junior Angler Tournament, the virtual MLK. We did several drive-in movies, to include one really big one where we had a special guest from a movie, I believe. He was involved with the Frankie Valli movie. I'm sorry, the name is escaping me right now. And we also, just completed our Juneteenth. Juneteenth was an inaugural celebration for us, and we were definitely trailblazers in that regard. We also had improvements to our aquatic facility. There are more to come. but we did vast improvements to the filtration system, and we have seen greater efficiencies in the system since then. It's an all-new system that's above ground. It has lowered our maintenance costs. We now have better quality water and improved temperature control. We are in the procurement phase with the overall renovations of the pool that is out to bid as we speak. We finally got approval to move forward with that from the school board. And so we'll be looking forward to bringing that before you when that comes about. From an asset improvement perspective, we installed shade sails at Constitution Playground, the OMRC Playground, the OMRC Bleachers, Cornerstone Playground, and 2 Pioneer Pavilions. Median improvement projects included Wiles Road median landscape and entry signage was installed that included trees, shrubs, grass, and mulch. Hillsboro Boulevard median between Dixie and US 1. We renovated the landscape beds, adding new junipers and other plants. And then on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, new medians installed by Department of Transportation, which included palm shrubs, sod, and new monument signs, which the city participated in as well in that installation. We did landscape improvements at the Fire Station 102, as well as Fire Station 75 on the beach, on the frontage along the north side. Pine View Cemetery, we modified the irrigation zones in Section 5 in preparation of upcoming sod restoration project, which we'll see in a little bit. We also installed a second volleyball court at the Villages of Hillsboro Park in conjunction with the parks maintenance crews and the recreation crews. Pickleball lines were installed at each of the tennis locations at Villages of Hillsboro, Constitution Park, Exeter, and Pioneer Park Tennis Center, with a total of 4 sets being added. For future consideration, some of the programming during and post construction for the Tigner Center is going to be considered. We would move our after school and our summer camp programming into the gym. Our outdoor program would operate as usual, such as football. And then post-construction, we want to engage the community on additional programming that they'd like to see at the new center. The West Deerfield Community Center is also in the budget this year. When that facility closes, we'll be asking for public input and looking for what they would like to see in that facility. In addition, the center may include staff offices. It could include things like after-school programs, summer camp, senior exercise programs, and more. We're also looking at increasing our grounds maintenance activities. So tree trimming in general throughout the city, we'll be increasing that activity. Fence repairs to replace the aging fences that we have and being in response to some of the wear and tear and vandalism that we're seeing. So we'll have increases in the operational accounts for that. The Marty Popelski Park, although we don't have funding this year for any large scale redevelopment, we do need to get in there and take care of the exotic vegetation that is starting to build up. So we'll be putting approximately $80,000 into that activity. Also additional maintenance for the Arboretum to ensure that that stays in the condition that it is today. Irrigation improvements for better maintenance on our fields and medians will be a major initiative that we have this year. And then, of course, minor tools and equipment increases to make sure that they have the tools and the equipment that they need to take care of our landscaping needs out there. Will also increase this year to 113,000 this year. And those are typically, one-time purchases, so not reoccurring. But obviously they do have a lifespan. Monument signage installation and replacement due to some accidents that we've had. Sometimes these monument signs that we have out there, they do get hit and run over or chipped. And we want to make sure we have the funding available to take care of those. Park improvements that we have scheduled would be the replacing the aging playground and security cameras and lighting system to enhance the safety of events that we have at Constitution Park, to include the walking paths and the asphalt. At Mayo Howard Park, parking lot expansion to accommodate community needs and parking safety. Over at Villages of Hillsboro, we're looking at the asphalt parking lot, the curbs, the trail. They're all deteriorated. The basketball court asphalt surfaces also are deteriorating. And so we're looking to remediate those issues. Obedient McKeithen Recreational Complex will be replacing the aging playground to be in conjunction with some of the additional activities that we have going on with the replacement of the Tigner Center. We're also looking at how we can improve community outreach with informational LED boards to strategically located in areas where we don't get the same type of public outreach as we do with some of our other outlets. And then, of course, increasing the coordination that we have between Parks and Recreation and Public Affairs and Marketing, something that you heard Ms. Stewart talk about, or Ms. Medina talk about during her presentation. We also want to concentrate heavily on the beach maintenance and enhancements. The Beach Ambassador Program, including 4 part-time staff that will be responsible for visitor information, reporting issues and violations, light maintenance and inspection of facilities. If we don't move forward with the Office of Public Safety, this is where it would reside. We've also started GIS and GPS asset tracking of our beach assets so that we can recalibrate our maintenance schedules and responsibilities. We're right-sizing the resource allocation for the beach and the pier area, which you'll see throughout the presentation portion of Parks and Recreation, and trying to improve and create higher visibility of our maintenance staff, meaning that we want the maintenance staff out there on the beach and the city staff out there on the beach to be highly recognizable while they're out there. So for instance, it could be like wearing a bright green colored shirt, and everybody knows that city staff wears the bright green colored shirt. We're putting additional money into our park amenities that those amenities include things like trash cans, benches, those types of assets. And we'll also be doing some sod replacement on the berm on the south side. We completed the north side. We need to continue on to the to the south side. And then pool renovations and continuity of programming as we do move forward with the repairs that need to be made there at the pool. We will be partnering with the school board to use their pool. So we have some programming worked out to be able to use that. And if the middle school pool reopens in next fiscal year, we will be able to go ahead and get our programming back into the newly renovated pool, which we're really looking forward to. But we imagine that we'll be in a period of construction next year for that. This is the overall budget changes that have been suggested by the department. And we'll go into each division. Under administration and community events, frozen position that we had last year, suggesting to unfreeze that Parks and Recreation Manager 1. This position is in the community events division. Well, it's the division, but they work on community events. We want to resume our annual citywide special events at pre-pandemic levels. So we'd like to bring all those back. We knew we wouldn't be able to do most of that this year. So a lot of that was scaled back. Additionally, there have been some suggestions for some increases that I wanted to make the commission aware of, which is bringing in a national act for the MLK event. This year, we were able to fund Juneteenth with a lot of the programs that we were not able to do this year. So we had I think the Juneteenth, this reflects the Juneteenth budget of what we were able to do this year. And then the Country Music National Act. We have done that in the past in the Country Music Festival National Act, but that's something that we could consider as well if we're looking to have more premier events in our city. Some of the other events that we will be moving forward with and budgeting for is Pioneer Days. That's at $60,000. Festival of Arts at $45,000. The Holiday Lights at $35,000.
Is that in this presentation somewhere?
I have it in my notes. I'm happy to.
Yeah, my suggestion is we put forward what all the events are
Mhm.
that are being suggested and where the budget is. I have a problem with some of these numbers.
Mhm.
But not getting a full picture and being read them without having them visually in front of me, it doesn't help me. So I don't know how the rest of the commission feels, but I would like to see a list of all of our events. Because like I said last night, I want to be able to go through and say, okay, we're going to cut this to be able to add to this and change it up. I don't want to be surprised when I get a calendar invite. I want to know exactly what our events are, and it needs to be discussed during budget time. And it shouldn't be in this presentation.
We'll make a note of that and make sure that community events are highlighted as we move forward. And I'll get that to the entire commission following this meeting.
Do we have anything scheduled for Veterans Day and Memorial Day? I'm talking about in the upcoming budget. Do we have any events?
We don't have anything scheduled. But I'm happy to have that conversation. And
That's something you and I discussed, the fact that we don't have anything for those events. And we essentially looked at doing that. So that's why it's good to get a full purview of what's being suggested.
in parks maintenance, the departmental request is to increase the maintenance staff in a very strategic way. So we historically have issues with keeping our part-time maintenance workers. It is one of those positions that is like a revolving door. And so we would like to take those 4 part-time maintenance workers, as well as the 3 sanitation workers that we have in there, and just make them all 5 full-time maintenance workers. We believe that we can fill those positions and keep them filled by doing so. Also, from the park ranger standpoint nor perspective, it's the same thing. It's very difficult to fill those part-time positions. Additionally, it's very difficult to cover the entire city with the staff that we currently have. And so the recommendation from the park rangers perspective would be to delete the 2 part-time park ranger positions, add a full-time park ranger position, and turn one of those into a lead to oversee all of the operation, as well as with the inclusion of the beach ambassadors. We also recognize that we need additional resources from an irrigation perspective. It's great that we put together great projects, but if the irrigation is not working properly, it's really all for nothing. And so we recognize that there are some needs from an irrigation perspective. Bringing our contracted landscape services back to pre-pandemic levels. Is that the all-inclusive or the increase on the contracted landscape services throughout the entire city?
Yes, that would be a increase for the general landscaping services, and then that also incorporates the Marty P. Park piece.
Also, we talked a little bit about the replacement of small engine tools. These are the whippers, the lawnmowers, those types of tools that we have not replaced in prior years. We did talk also about the fence repairs and replacement, sod, soil, and aggregation supplies. We did have a light budget on that this year, but we do need to increase that back to pre-pandemic levels to get the maintenance where it needs to be. We did talk about the tree, the irrigation, the hardscape maintenance. And when we talk about hardscape, we're talking about sidewalks and pavers and medians and making sure that they are pressure cleaned and sealed appropriately so that they look the way that they should. And we did also talk about beach amenities as well.
When you say beach amenities, what do you mean?
The beach amenities include things like garbage cans, benches.
I think it's going to be helpful for me anyways, is seeing a more detailed layout of this. This department is struggling, in my opinion. And if the priorities, the look and feel of the city. We need to be able to have a better understanding of where this money's going as opposed to just a line item that says 20,000. So we know what that means. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if we can get some details on that. I see with the elimination of so many of these part-time positions, the addition of the full-time positions end up costing us more money than the part-time positions, but there's value there. If there's value there, which I think is what the point you're making, is justifiable and it makes sense, but there is a lot of details that need to be fleshed out here. And specifically where some of this money is going. So again, we can say, take it out of here, put it towards this. We want less of this, more of this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Within the athletics and aquatics division, we want to change the title of our part-time concession attendants to part-time rec leaders. It's a cost neutral change, but it just will allow us to utilize those staff in a more robust way than just concession attendants, which we typically don't do a lot of anymore because the concessions are run by some of our leagues like Little League and the Deerfield Beach Packer Rattlers. So it just allows them to be a little bit more diverse in their job responsibilities. Also unfreezing unfreezing one of the recreational leaders in there. It's a part-time position, and unfreezing 2 water safety instructors, but we're doing that at a half-year funding in consideration of the pool renovations. And then an increase in the athletic program to provide a fall soccer program and a volunteer coordination event. So we want to be able to get our volunteers together and celebrate what they do for the city.
Do we have a list of what our athletic programming is and what the budget is for that?
Sure. I can also get that to you as well with the other asks. Within recreation, it would be the unfreezing of a part-time recreational leader position that was previously frozen, as well as one of the park manager positions. We also want to introduce adult and teen vocational programs at the Hillsboro Community Center. In that part of the city, we recognize a need for providing those types of activities and programs. We want to bring that over to that part of the city. Additionally, this right here, we would like to put in some new flooring. These tile squares, they look great now because they haven't had a lot of usage because we haven't had a lot of rentals here. But we would like to change out this flooring because it gets beat up pretty bad, even with just a few rentals for weddings or whatever parties, whatever the case may be. And resuming the full recreational programming would increase the budget to previous levels at about approximately $116,000. Some of those recreational programmings, they include things like the Halloween festivities, our Winter Wonderland, and a lot of our 70-30 contracts that we have. 70-30 contracts means we bring in outside folks. So jujitsu, fencing, tumbling and dancing, those types of activities. Within the summer camp program, we're just really seeking to bring that back to full scale again. It's my understanding that in 2008, we had a really successful program. I think we reached capacity there. And so the budget that you see here reflects around what that 2018 level of service was. In 2019, we had partnered with the school board and we had issues with their facilities, so we were not able to do our full-scale programming there. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So, but we're looking to bring that back. That also includes the Deerfield Beach Future Leaders Program at $75,000. Field trips and additional programs like taking some of these kids to Sea Camp. I think that's a very interesting idea considering some of our partnerships that we've had recently. And then as well as the transportation costs for these field trips. This program is anticipated to bring in approximately $200,000 in revenue. Within our waterfront operations department, again, this is an area where we see a revolving door with our part-time peer attendants. We have 4 vacancies right now. So we'd like to delete those part-time peer attendants and create 2 full-time peer attendants. We'd like to delete the part-time maintenance worker and get a full-time maintenance worker to work in that area. And we also talked about the beach ambassadors as well. So that would be the cost for 4 part-time beach ambassadors. That's the all-in costs to bring that operation into the city. We're also putting approximately $45,000 towards repair and maintenance costs, specifically on the beach area. So this is outside of the regular landscaping and the amenities that we talked about. So this will be for things that come up, get broken, something in the bathroom, one of the partitions comes down. I'd like to have dedicated funding to address these repair and maintenance issues. So we're not scrambling for funds and there's responsibility within this division to get that done. Also, some peer improvements that we're looking to do, which include there's some building server room access controls that need to occur. Guardrail behind the beach cafe walkway is something we could propose. Now that would change the look of that, but I think that's something that we don't necessarily need to do, but we can discuss that because it was designed in that way. And additionally, the pier entrance gate needs to be upgraded. Oops. Within our cemetery division, the suggestion is to add a maintenance worker full-time. That was brought forward by the division. And as well as the Pine View and Memorial Grounds Restoration Project. This is something that we need to concentrate on to ensure that cemetery grounds are taken care of the way that they are supposed to and they look the way that they're supposed to. $30,000 is not going to get us where we need to be, but it will allow us to start it in a phased approach as we continue to move forward year over year to get the cemeteries, both of them, in the condition that I expect.
Do we have any plans to look at our rates that we're charging since we're the lowest of any municipality around?
We absolutely do.
That would help us get some of that funding to go towards it, because you can't expect it to be top-notch shape and then charge as low rate as we charge for the cemeteries.
Mm-hmm. Next, we'll go into the capital request. So we did talk about the Oviedo McKeithen Recreational Complex playground replacement at $225,000. That's a CDBG fund, general fund split. We're also looking at Constitution Park improvements in the amount of $391,900. That includes the replacement of the aging playground, security cameras and lighting systems to enhance events and safety. Walking path asphalt in that park is cracked and deteriorating, so that includes the restoration of that, as well as security cameras within Constitution Park out by the Arboretum as well. So the security cameras will be not only in Constitution Park, but sometimes we talk about the Arboretum separately. So The informational LED boards, we're proposing to put forth 150,000 for informational LED boards. We believe 150,000 can get us 2 of them at the current cost of these signage boards. And the locations are not yet determined, but again, we do have some ideas. One good spot might be in our linear park on 10th Street across from MLK, and another one maybe out west as well. Villages of Hillsboro Park improvements include asphalting the parking lot, the curbs, and the trail, as well as restoration of the basketball court asphalt surfaces. At Mayo Howard Park, $200,000 is being proposed to expand that parking lot to accommodate the community needs and improve the parking safety there, as it's a tight turn coming in off that curve that you come off of. And the vehicles and equipment replacement, these include a replacement of one of our Ranger vehicles at $30,000, pickup truck. It's a maintenance vehicle. It's an F-250 with some components added to it, like the lift gate at $80,000, a F-350 with a stake body and a lift gate at $50,000. An irrigation van, which is a replacement vehicle at $30,000. An additional surf rake at $60,000. A cab and chassis 19-foot box truck replacement at $48,000. One other of our F-350 pickups without the stake body at $45,000, and a 15-passenger transit van replacement at $40,000 makes up the vehicle equipment request.
So you're taking the entire $200,000 we just got from the FAU research and we're putting it to Mayo Howard Park.
Yes.
Okay. I disagree with that. And we talked about that before. But, okay. Anything else?
That's the last slide on the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Parnas?
Yeah, I have relatives buried in various cemeteries up north. Do we charge a fee for maintenance of a grave by the year?
So our fees include what's called perpetual maintenance.
Yes. Do we have such a thing as perpetual maintenance?
We do, but our rates are really low, so we don't have a healthy perpetual care fund.
You think it's something that should be looked into
It is, and we
as
are.
a source of income to keep the place looking as nice on an individual basis? My parents are buried in a rather large cemetery, and we have perpetual care, which in that particular cemetery, they use a use plant, YEW, and it's trimmed and kept neat. And whenever my children or I am in the area and visit, it looks like it was just cut, and there's a fee for it, and we're happy to pay it because it looks nice. And when the grandchildren come, say the grandparents, etc., it's respectful that it's taken care of. And I think that's something that we can look into so that that's additional income in keeping the cemetery at top-notch shape as can be for those mourners and those people who visit their relatives there and reflect on it. So it's just a thought that perhaps you could look into.
Commissioner Drosky, you have anything?
I do. Thank you. First of all, you were talking about, and most importantly, you were talking about identifying the beach personnel with the bright green shirt. I have a monopoly on bright green shirts, so we're gonna have to talk about that. The West Deerfield Community Center, I believe it's on page 37. You don't have to turn back to it. Yes, it is West Deerfield Community Center. Are you talking about the back room of Pioneer Park? Or are you talking about the building underneath the water tower?
That would be the building underneath the water tower. And it includes parking lot improvements as well.
So is there an ETA when that may be back online? Because that's a question that I get semi-frequently.
So if I may, it's, we already have a set of design plans. So that has been, so to say, short-circuited, so we can go directly into a construction for that facility, which is the renovation. So it could take, if we start right at the beginning of the fiscal year, possibly a 6-month period.
But if you could also, Mr. Good, talk about what is available at that facility today.
So today we currently have renovated one of the front rooms, has a independent access, which has, it's a very good meeting room. It's a good size. It's the front room. If you know, when you come in through the door, that's from the south, and the very first door to your left, if you remember, it used to be a room with a bunch of cabinets and things. The entire room has been stripped down to nothing but 4 walls. It's been renovated with the flooring. The walls been painted, and it can be set up for any type of meeting that would fit within that space.
Because I know, I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but I know a lot of the HOAs out west were using that building beforehand, including Century Village, had some meetings there too. And now, that's been offline and they've had to meet actually here in this building going forward. So whenever that can get back online, that would
I could say to you right now, it's available now. If I know that we had a meeting about 2 weeks ago with staff. It was just a keying issue. Once we get the keying issue, it's available now.
Okay, I'll go into the details with you separately outside of this. I agree with the mayor as far as the events. I'd like to see the breakdown too, so if you can give that to all 5 of us. Just starting with October 1 through September 30. What are the events? Just like you did on the community participation grants, just list out the event and the amount. I think I'd like to see that as well. And then with respect to the capital outlay on page 46, you have 1.445 million. And on page 38, it's 1.497 million. So 45 million, excuse me, 45,000 was cut out of there. So I don't know what got cut, but
capital outlay can consist of anything above $3,000. So when you see that capital outlay, there may be smaller components in there. A computer, for example, something like that could be considered capital outlay. These are the major capital outlays that we.
So 46 is not the exhaustive list then. Page 46 is not the exhaustive list.
Right, because anything with the useful life over 1 year or $3,000 is going to be considered capital outlay. So I if that's something that happy to see, I'd be happy to do that. But it's, again, we try to get all the major capital items that will be in the CIP program in here. So CIP program is 25,000 and above, and not necessarily. And then again, capital outlay could be anything from 3,000 to above.
Okay, all right. I just didn't know where the discrepancy was. That's all I have for now.
First of all, I don't want my comments to reflect poorly on the staff of the Parks and Rec because the staff has done a tremendous job. Every event that I've been to, they're out there, they're busting their butt. They're doing everything they can to set the event up, to make it look great. And my hat's off to them. They do a great job. But I think of all of the departments over the past year that I've been disappointed in, this one has probably been the most. Looking at the upkeep of the city, looking at, I mean, walking around Sullivan Park, grills are rusted out. Bathrooms have the broken tiles and stuff written on them. There's just, we've got our capital program budget on slide 46. What about the roof of the concession stand over by the ball fields? Is that being looked at? Is that
That's
being
this
repaired?
year. That's this year. And a week ago, they were starting in a week or two. So I think they were just waiting on materials.
Because there's the ball fields we talked about. There's just a lot of things that I think it's been a lack of leadership in the department as opposed to the actual employees of the department. So I hope that next year things turn around, because that's what people see of our city. When they see the bathrooms that are in disarray, when they see the grills at Sullivan Park that are all rusted out, or the bathrooms are filthy. These are things that represent our city, that represent me as a commissioner. And these are the things, we've talked how many times about the deer that's on top of the firehouse. I don't know if that's Park and Recs, but it took 6 months to get that deer off that had one ear left. Things like that reflect on all of us. And I know everybody in this room has pride in their job, and they have pride in the city. But when I look out at the things that have been disheveled, I don't see that. And that's kind of disappointing. And I'm hoping that with new leadership in this department, that those things will be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I pointed out a few problems with our baseball fields, and I will say that they've been addressed properly. I've been assured that when the state tournament starts in 3 weeks, everything will have been done. The fields themselves are in beautiful shape. The scoreboard is being fixed and operational, so we're not embarrassed with it. I spent some time there, and I must say that the Parks Department, as far as the condition of the 4 baseball fields, is tremendous. The fields are in better than the Little League that I grew up with coaching. These fields are almost professional in appearance and in manner. And I think it adds to the kids' enjoyment. The stands are adequate. The few things that needed to be fixed are being attended to, and I appreciate that. The staff is doing their job, and Tom, I know that it fell on your shoulders, and I thank you for the efforts that you've made in getting the things that need to be corrected done. And I'd like to see that improvement continue throughout the next year. The same for the Packer Rattlers as well, the Football League. These are important showcases for our city, and more importantly, for the children in the program. That the city cares enough to give them a pristine place to play that they can be proud of. And I see that with the enjoyment that they get out of it. And so I hope that continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that some of the points that my colleague, Commissioner Hudak, made are valid. I've seen things around the city as well. But I want to tell you that every time I've called the city manager or the assistant city manager, they have given attention to things. I don't know, how to point a finger at some of the things, but I have seen things, not only in my district, but I've seen things. But I will tell you that from a management perspective, I've never asked him something and it went unaddressed. And so I know that this is an area that it's more than it is something of consistency. It's more of an aberration. I'm sure it will get better. And the reason I say that, and I'm confident in saying that, because I've seen things. And why is this like this? And why is this like that? And I call them and they definitely pay attention to it.
And I agree with that. If I find something and I point it out, they're right on top of it. But that tells me that there's a lack of leadership. I shouldn't be the one pointing this out and pointing that out and pointing this out and pointing that out. The employees out there, the managers out there, the staff out there should say, hey, I got to fix this. Hey, the scoreboards have been broken for 6 weeks. What are we doing about that? Hey, the toilet hasn't been looked at in 3 weeks. Why? That shouldn't be the commissioner going, yeah, I understand. We see this, we see that. We tell them, and they are very, very responsive to it. The point is if you have pride in your work, when that trash can is broken, it doesn't take a commissioner to call up the city manager to say, hey, why is this trash can broken? An employee should say, hey, the trash can is broken. Let me get out there and get it fixed. Or, hey, supervisor, the trash can is broken. Can we get a new one? That's my point, because we got 400 employees, so there's 800 eyes out there.
And in all fairness,
I will tell you that there are certain situations where whatever the issues were, they actually were corrected. And then just from the traffic in certain areas and certain people in those areas, you look at something, for instance, I've gone to a park before and asked that something attention be given to, something not great, just maybe a trash can issue, something of that nature, and it's taken care of. And within a day or two, it's going right back to the way that it was, because somebody, and that does happen where they've actually corrected a situation. And, by not having somebody there 24/7, people just do destructive things. I'd be a lot more concerned if I didn't see changes, like with some of the things that you've seen, some of the things that I've seen. But I tell you, with the amount of foot traffic that we have at parks and certain things that they actually could fix it. It was broken when you saw it, fixed, and when you saw it again, still broken. And the appearance could be that nothing was given to it. So I'm just saying that does happen.
I think everybody's point on this is right on. The problem is a lack of leadership. We know that. We don't have a director there. We have a problem. And it is not necessarily a reflection on the employees to do that, because in many times without that leadership, they've done a phenomenal job on working their way through that. I do have a problem with, as Commissioner Hudak pointed out, with having to ask in the first place. It should not be my eyes that have to go see that. I've told you guys, I've spent weeks down there by the beach looking at things. I have drive by Quiet Waters. I noticed not on here is Quiet Waters, the park next to the Quiet Waters Elementary School. It looks horrible. I see nothing in the budget for that. I see nothing in the budget for Pioneer Park. What I think we're lacking here is a complete park inventory. So we can see, these are all the issues that we have. Because I tell you right now, we get in our cars and we start driving around, you guys are not going to be looking good. If we start driving in these parks and you see the conditions of them. Some of them may have been fixed and they got broken right away again. But I'll tell you right now, some of them have been sitting there the same way, because you know what I like to do is take a picture of it and sit on it and see how long it takes till somebody does something about it. That gives me a true indicator whether stuff's getting done or not. It's not getting done. That's the problem. So I think when we have we have an evaluation of our parks, a complete park inventory, we know where we need to spread our money around. Same thing goes with a citywide program. I cannot tell you what programs we offer to our residents right now. It's a big complaint that we have. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I know Packer Rattlers because that's the soup du jour for too many people. But there's a hell of a lot of other programs we have that I don't know what the status is of them. We know about Little League, but Little League is almost independently run. Pack Rattler's kind of the same way, but I can't tell you about the other things that we offer because I don't see the visibility here on that. We need to know what the attendance is on that. How many of them are Deerfield residents? How many are not? What programs do we need to eliminate? What programs do we need to add? What special events do we need to eliminate because something's not going right or something is going really right? If you want to know where the bar needs to be set for a banquet, take a look at the Juneteenth banquet. I've never been to a better banquet in all these years I've been in Deerfield Beach. It's the best banquet I've ever attended. That's your bar. Now, there might be other ones that we have that, hey, we need to scale it back because it's not drawing the crowd in like we thought. We have a parade that doesn't work, then we eliminate the parade and we shift it around to give the residents what they want as opposed to just rolling out the same thing over and over again. That's the kind of evaluation we need. And I think this isn't a reflection necessarily on you, David, because this is a problem we've had for a very long time in this department. We have not had a long-term director in that department since probably Vince Kendrick. In a long time. So for those of you who don't know who that is, that's like 14 years ago. But we need to do those kind of evaluations, just like we did with the CRA. We say, okay, we've got this event coming up. What was the return we got? What was the feedback we got? What works, what doesn't work? You know, we're talking about spending the $200,000 in Mayo Howard Park. The problem I have is when you expand the parking lot, you lose green space. So where's the trade-off? Where's the evaluation that tells us that's how that should work? I don't even know if it's been done. It looks like you guys took the $200,000 and threw it towards it. And that's where it's earmarked. And I don't like that because I think the lighting that goes around that pathway that goes really from the fire station all the way around to the gas station at 10th, improved lighting along there would make it pleasing and a safe environment for people to go to that park. They might not necessarily take that path. They might come from internally within the community, but the only parking lot you have for that park is right there. So if you're going to expand it, let me know how much green space I'm going to lose. The reason I got involved in politics and that where I met Commissioner Drosky is because the city government came in and sold a portion of the park over in Villages of Hillsboro to put a cell tower on it. They gave up green space to put a cell tower in to make a few coins. We got it killed. But those kind of decisions need to be we need to look at that and see where the trade-off is on that. I need to know what other parks we have and what conditions they're on before I start spending money in certain areas. Without that, I'm missing something. And if I say put a lot of money in this one park and there's another park that needs it a hell of a lot more, and it's a blind spot for me, then I've allocated money in the wrong place. And that's what I don't want to do. Same thing goes with programming. Same thing goes with special events. You know, we talked about, David, you and I, the fact that we can't depend on others to do something for Memorial Day. That's a big holiday. We should do something. So that money needs to go somewhere, come from somewhere. You know, I don't know if, you know, with where the budget is for some of these special events, but when we look at those and see where, as a whole, it's going to be a lot easier for us to help you, help us give you direction on where to distribute it. What's been happening lately is staff just puts it in and we kind of go along with it because it's in the budget. We don't debate it. That's what we need to do. That's what this workshop should be. Future workshops should be about that. I want to look at this and say, here's your pile of money. Here's all the holes you got to fill. Start doing some horse trading. Figure out what's going to get it this year and what's not. And if not, we say, okay, we're going to tackle 2 lifeguard stands this year. We're going to tackle 2 more the next year. Whatever, we have a long-term plan and when they're going to be done and everybody's on board with it. If someone changes gears on it, then we know what we're sacrificing to do that. But I think we lack that visibility. We lack it as a commission. Certainly the residents lack it when they look at it. You know, I know years ago we talked about lacrosse. And I don't know if lacrosse is still the right thing to do here, but I don't know what we're offering to say what works, what doesn't work. So those are the stats we need to see, in my opinion. I don't know what the rest of you feel. But that's how it's going to help me make an educated decision. But this department needs a lot of help. And there's a lot of things in here that I don't see in the budget. I don't know what the condition is of Pioneer Park's boat ramp. Isn't that the only boat ramp we have of significance that can go to the intercoastal in the city of Deerfield Beach? Where are we at with that? What's the condition? Because I've heard complaints that there's stuff broken. I see nothing in the budget.
We will talk about that in the environmental services. We do have a plan for that one.
Okay. See, that's, we think about Parks and Rec, and some of them are tucked away in other areas. So I'm glad we're going to at least address it. Is there anyone from the public that care to comment on this? Yes, Katie's iPhone. Miss iPhone, go right ahead.
Hi, this is Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street. Everybody knows that I am very active in the city with a lot of different events and things. One of the things that I always take a mention to is the fact that Parks and Rec is the largest organization that needs the most assistance right now. Not having a director nor an assistant director for everybody to go to be able to oversee and supervise the department is incredibly a deficit to our entire facility our entire city on so many levels. In addition to that, as many people participated throughout the year at the food distributions, you could definitely tell the people from every single department in the city, including Parks and Rec, that were there to get a paycheck, that were only there because it was their job, nothing else. And that is something that I feel is lacking. Part of the supervisors and part of the actual directorship is in motivating employees to go above and beyond. If you see something broken, if you see a tile broken, take it upon yourself to get the work order in and get it fixed and get it repaired properly. Instead, we have people that don't know who they should talk to, don't care about talking to anybody. The morale is horrible right now in that whole department. And a lot of other departments across the city, they've got different things. You've got IT department that has hoorah meetings in the mornings. You have other departments that actually get involved and increase the morale within their employees. But in this case, it isn't the same with Department of Parks and Rec. It's not the same, and it really needs to be addressed. It needs to be adjusted. We need a director. I don't understand the delay. We need a director. We need to find somebody that can take that department and make it whole again. And hopefully that becomes a major priority moving forward in the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clark-Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. We used to have a community advisory board over the parks. And I don't know, maybe that's something that we may want to look at again in establishing for Parks and Rec or the community advisories, because people in the community are in those parks every day, although our employees are also, but there was a feeling of more communication as to what is going on in Parks and Rec when we had that. I don't know if that's something you want to go back to. Also, the Future Leaders Program, I just want to ask Mr. Santucci if that is the summer youth employment program.
That is correct.
For years, we've kept that at that amount of money. Other cities have looked at our program and they've developed their programs, and they've been able to increase the number of students to participate. And I was just wondering if possibly, as this goes forward, if we could look at increasing the number of students and of course, increasing the amount of money that's there. And I wanted to know, are the confiscated funds from the law enforcement, are we using those funds in that program?
Thank you. Have anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good.
So for that last question, I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that if we're using confiscated funds for the that program, but that's something I can certainly find out and look into. But I do want to, if I may, Mayor, just say that I'm very happy to announce, and we haven't really been able to up to this point because we're talking about completion of background screenings and pre-employment things like that. But I'm very happy to announce that the new director of Parks and Recreation will start July 6th.
Congratulations, Ben. I'm so happy for you. So happy for you. That's good.
So her name is Teresa Renard. She is formerly the director of a very large park system in Kansas City. So she did the entire park system at Kansas City. She also did a large stint in Fort Lauderdale as the assistant director. She has come up through the ranks, literally starting on a lawnmower, been in the parks business for 30 years. She's highly accredited. She has a very strong community focus and has great relationships with her staff. So I think she's going to be a great fit for the organization, for that department. And I'm really looking forward to her starting.
I'm happy that we have that person in place and she's ready to start. And of course, she's going to get all the support from all of us, because like Katie brought out some good points, but I'm going to also tell you, knowing the area and knowing the people lends credibility in a special way to department positions, especially in Parks and Recs. For instance, in Lighthouse Point, the Parks and Rec director played on the fields in Lighthouse Point. She was raised on those fields. She brings a special commitment and passion simply because she lives in Lighthouse Point. Her kids are now playing on those fields. And so I just hope that whoever we get just understands the layout in Deerfield and just understand the kind of town that we get. She's coming from Kansas City, but to understand what our layout is like, what our people is like. And that's going to be difficult. It's going to take her a while to learn that because she's not from here. So I hope it works out. I really do. I hope it works out. But there is an adjustment. I hope that everybody is patient for her to, to get acclimated to the way that we do business here. But whenever we call someone from the outside, we have to always take into account, they have to go to some of our personnel and say, how do you do this, this, and this? And then they take their suggestions and then basically implement them. So sometimes what we have, whether we like to look at it or not, is that we have insiders training people that are coming from the outside. And the reason that happens is because when they come, they don't know how we do business. And they have to rely on people inside to actually give them those kinds of instructions so that they can learn how we do work here. I'm glad that we have that person in place. And I just hope that it really works out for the city. This city deserves, someone to come in and just take the time and learn the people, learn the layout, introduce new programs, do all kinds of things that will ultimately create, an attraction to Deerfield. As I said last night, this is about families coming here to live, because when people nowadays, the young families, when they look at going to a city, whether it's Pompano, whether it's Lighthouse Point, whether it's Deerfield, whatever, they look at what you are offering sports wise, because a lot of parents, they're looking for programs to put their kids in. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're looking for professional athletes eventually, but to keep their kids active and let them learn some of the things that they need to learn, like teamwork, like working with other people in a diverse environment. What we offer in this area is important. How seriously we take it is important. So Um, she's starting on January the 6th. So, I know these, my colleagues, I know this commission, we will do everything we can to make that transition as easy as possible. But I really, really hope that this works for our city. I hope we don't become a training ground for other cities.
Anyone else? No? Okay. One thing I will say is when it comes to an advisory board, I don't need another advisory board in the city. I can't fill the ones that we have. We just need another staff member to babysit it, quite frankly. So I don't think we need another advisory board, but I think what we do need is we need the ability for the residents to easily contact us and let us know what their suggestions and what their needs are. I think that would be something, because in the end, the advisory board is really going to be the opinions of just the however many people we have on that board. What we need is to hear from everyone out there in the community with suggestions that can be looked at. And I really hope with all these budget presentations that we are listening to the people who are in those departments, that lead those departments, and that the budget is a reflection of their suggestions, not just those at the highest level, meaning the two assistant city managers and the city manager, but it is their input that comes from that is reflected in these budgets, as opposed to making, they're the ones that know the departments the best, hopefully, I hope. And if they don't, I'm sure you will interject at that point. But I hope it's a reflection of what their suggestions are. And because I think some of the problems we're having is that I think employees are reporting things and they're getting lost and not communicated at the level that place they need to be to get some of this stuff done. When it comes to maintenance and having things done out there, we need to take a much more proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. We're good at the reactive. We can tell you guys, hey, we got a problem. You guys usually go take care of it, but it shouldn't get to that level. It should be proactive and not reactive. So I think we beat this department pretty well. Can we move on? We all right? Thank you. Next victim.
Punch Joe.
Must stop track.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. That's the worst. Very, very yeah, it's crazy. That's how I feel about markets. I feel like I've been watching markets since like 12 or 14 years old. Very talented. Oh, great.
Yeah, yeah.
Have we made Chad sweat enough? Are we right? Put him in the hot seat, then we hit pause. It's not fair. We'll wait till the vice mayor gets back. Commissioner Drosky, stop eating his good cookie. Call timeout. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and get started again, everyone.
Ready for me to begin, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. We only have sustainable management, environmental services, so we should be out of here by 9, I'm sure. Go ahead and work right into sustainable management and their achievements. The Siemens performance contract construction phase is near completion. There's just a few punch list items left, but it included the CNG fueling station, 89 new AC units, LED lighting throughout our city facilities, building automation, and many more green infrastructure improvements into our facilities. We've made substantial project on our joint renourishment program. We have had our settlement with the town of Hillsboro Beach. We have completed our master plan, which Chad I think he may have already reached out for appointments with each one of you, or that would be forthcoming here very shortly to provide you insight into the master plan. That was done a while ago, but we did need to make some tweaks to have it align with the settlement agreement. And we have made strides with regional coordination. So we are on track with the beach renourishment efforts, and you're going to see a large capital outlay item in here for beach renourishment project. We launched the DFB Waste Watch application, which is growing and looks very good. It's providing great information out to the residents. We wanted to make sure, excuse me, we wanted to make sure that that DFB Waste Watch application was up and running prior to the bulk route optimization, which will begin on July 1st. I think just as we saw the route maps, how much of an efficiency we're going to gain on that. Additionally, we will have Vector Fleet Management, which was the contract that was recently awarded. They will begin July 1st to start to do the work on our solid waste vehicles, our heavy fleet vehicles. So that's another improvement that we're happy to see come on board. Future considerations. One, I think that is very important, quite frankly, is a rate study and a fund analysis. If you look at the fund.
I'm going to pause you for a moment. Are we on mute?
Have I been on mute? Well,
we could hear you.
Hopefully everyone in the audience and on Zoom could hear me. So if not, I'm sure they'll say something in the chat. I'm pretty sure I've been on mute the whole night. Yep. Sorry. So as a rate study and fund analysis, when we look at the fund health, they are in the red overall, and they continue to do that on a trend. And it's very important that we look at that fund and we look at the operations and we match it with an appropriate rate that will get this fund healthy. It's actually a comment that we have this year from our auditors. And so we want to make sure that we work towards that. The solid waste working group. That's an effort that is, currently being spearheaded by Commissioner Drosky. And, what comes out of that at the end of the day is going to have an effect on us. And we are a very unique city in many respects. Not only that we are our own hauler, but the assets that we have in the city and the surrounding area for disposal is unlike many others in the city. So that conversation as it unfolds, we need to keep those things in mind. One of the things that we want to look at after the rate study, when we talk about residential billing, but could be in future years, is the residential bill appropriate on where it is currently on the water bill, or should we add this into the tax roll? There's different ways you can do it. There's costs and benefits to each, but I think I just want to, at this point, kind of plant that seed, because once we do the rate study and fund analysis, I think we'll be in a better position to have further conversation on that. And then, of course, a big ticket item. Excuse me. Let me read from this. So then our recycling program, as we know, we suspended it, and we suspended it like many others here locally and across the nation have done for reasons that are really not born on the city, but in the behavior in which residents and people who are in the recycling program have recycled. We're talking about the contamination rate. But additionally, beyond that, the other issues that we've seen with recycling is the market conditions that have changed dramatically. And so where we were once supplementing our solid waste with the recycling program because it was a revenue source. There was a point in time that was no longer the case. And with the contamination rates increasing and that, I want to say, we had a period of time where waste management was allowing us to continue at that contamination rate, but they were, contractually, it's all contractually said to us, well, at a given time, when you hit that threshold, you're going to be charged this amount. And at that point, it just became unfeasible for us to continue with the recycling program. But how do we bring that recycling program back? And in which way do we do it? Because we know that it wasn't working how it was originally done. I've been working and brainstorming with Mr. Gressick here on ways to do that. And there's some options out there. Things like, do we do it on a demand type of service? So do we offer the recycling program to those who want to recycle? That's one way to do it. Do we bring the program back but modify it from a material perspective? What does that look like? But as we start to see, and we are starting to see the market turn around a little bit in some of these recycling commodities, it's going to be time to have this conversation this year and have a real dive into what we do with recycling. But I will say that the budget as proposed does not include the recycling program. Coastal Marine Resiliency Program. So it's the priorities and the funding. It's the beach master plan that we talked about that will be brought before you, as well as the funding to match that. And then from a sustainability initiative perspective, we are installing electric vehicle charging stations in some of our public parking areas. But do we want to bring electric vehicles into the city? Do some cost analysis on that and some of the lighter fleet, the passenger vehicles. Looking at new solar and renewable energies. We did do some solar programs as part of the Siemens project. There's one proposed in here in the budget here, but also renewable energy sources that we could look at, things like our windmills appropriate and that sort of thing in our park to generate energy. And then community outreach as well. From a sustainable standpoint and with the partnership that we do have with Siemens, there are opportunities to do community outreach so that we can teach residents and businesses some of the things that they can do to make their own infrastructure more sustainable and resilient. So from an overall perspective in sustainable management, we're seeing a decrease and a 9% increase in operations that we'll get into. And then the capital outlay for this year has been greatly increased over last year. But frankly, last year we did not do any or much of it, I should say.
Why is the personal services? Okay. Thanks.
So with the efficiencies that we have with Vector, some of the allocations that were previously in recycling solid waste, the allocation of those salaries is being shifted. So it will no longer reside in solid waste. We're going to take advantage of a retirement that we have, and we're going to reclassify a position to a lower grade. And so we can have more of a focus on customer service within that department. So that's an administrative manager down to a customer service supervisor. We've seen an increase in disposal costs. Most of it is attributed to the CPI increase in the contract rate, but also in the amount of materials that we've seen. So we're estimating that it's going to be at about a $284,000 increase in the cost of disposal. Dumpster purchases and repairs. The steel price increases have skyrocketed, as we do know that, and we've seen that across all construction trades. And that's going to be about $120,000 increase in that operation. CNG maintenance and utilities is a cost increase, but just bear in mind that the costs of all the Siemens activities are all the costs and all the benefits are weighed against each other. So as you see this as a increase in cost for the CNG station, there are decreases elsewhere as it relates to the cost of CNG fuel, electricity, other utilities across the board. So We want to, we were very successful during the pandemic with the quarterly shred events. And I think we've learned firsthand that our new shred truck, or not our new shred truck, it's anything but new. Our old shred truck is at its end of useful life. And so talked about how we can move forward with shred events. How do we want to do this? We think it's better to contract a quarterly shred event rather than have our own truck and have that purchase and that responsibility. So that way we can do 4, we can move them throughout the city, 1 a quarter, and also do our annual household hazardous waste event. When it comes to fueling, we've seen an increase in the cost of diesel fuel, but it has been significantly offset by the cost of CNG. And Mr. Gressick, if you could just talk about that for me.
Sure. Can everybody hear me? Great. Good evening. So we've been fueling on site on our new CNG facility for about a month now. And previously we were fueling up at the Clean and Green station over on Powerline Road. We were paying on average $25,000 a month for fueling there. We estimate, based on some of the preliminary numbers that we're getting, that our monthly spend is going to be about $10,000 now on site. So it's going to be significant savings. In addition to that, there's operational savings. So our staff doesn't have to go to that site and fuel. They literally hook up their trucks overnight and get in the truck in the morning. The truck is nice and fueled up. And so it's really a nice little project that we did here. So
congratulations on that, Chad. That's really huge. I know there were a lot of people that were critical of us putting in a station. They clearly did not have the expertise that you did on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're also going to, expecting an increase in the cost of our vehicle PM and repair parts. It's just what we're experiencing from a market perspective at this point. And so we expect that that's going to be an increase. And then we are recommending $40,000 for that rate and fund sufficiency study. From fleet management, we did talk about the reallocation of some of those salaries. That's reflected here on the flip side of that. We'd also like to reclassify a vacant fleet assistant manager to a fleet supervisor. That's going to be helpful for us, not only from a cost perspective, but with some of the services going over to Vector Fleet Management, we believe we can downgrade that position at this point. We do need to do some fuel management system upgrades. We have a fuel management system that you pull up to the pump, it recognizes the vehicle, it tracks it. The technology has become obsolete, and it will provide us better reporting and visibility over our fueling operations at our site. We have a $10,000 expense for shop tools and equipment. Waste oil disposal has increased a little bit, and we're looking to replace 2 overhead garage doors at a capital expense that need to be replaced at this point in the fleet garage. From the coastal side of things, big ticket item here obviously is a joint beach renourishment project. And also a request to replace the solar array at Central City campus. Chad, can you talk a little bit about the beach renourishment project, the initial upfront cost and the opportunities afterwards, please?
Sure. So the $3 million is really the maximum we would spend as stipulated in the settlement. We certainly don't anticipate the project costing that much, but we certainly need to budget for that just in case. We've already had very, very positive conversations with the state in regards to cost sharing because of the regional approach that we're looking at on this project. Not only working with the town of Hillsboro, but also possibly working with the city of Deerfield, Boca Raton rather. So the state loves those regional approaches. So like I said, we've gotten a really good favorable response on potential state funding and participation on that project. We also have monies from Hurricane Matthew from FEMA that possibly could be leveraged towards this project. And then, of course, we typically approach the county for some assistance as well. And we've been successful with getting some county funding on beach nourishment projects in the past. So Yes, this would be the maximum upfront. But we have a very good record of recouping a good portion of that money through local and federal money. So we certainly feel confident that we'll be able to do that here as well.
So with all that said, there may be opportunities of ways that we can fund this differently, not just maybe through general fund dollars, but through a reserve. I mean, and this is, for consideration, through a reserve of the fund balance, right? Because as we know, and as Chad just said, the maximum is going to be 3 million, but at the end of the day, we expect it's going to be less. And so just like we do for hurricanes and we designate a portion of our undesignated reserve, we could do the same thing for this project, perhaps. And this is something I can, have further discussion with the CFO, but we could do that. So we're not allocating the general fund dollars directly for this. And then when it does come time to, pay the bill, we can do that. So if that's something that the commission would be interested in we can present it in that way. And I see Stephanie shaking her head back there. So in terms of the capital program budget, we did talk about the beach renourishment and solar array, the fire station fuel storage tank decommissioning. We were able to do one this year, I believe.
Yes, we have one budgeted at Goolsby. We have the tank decommissioning there. Yes.
And the other one is at Fire Station 4. What we've learned by starting that activity is that that tank fuels the generator. So before we're able to do the fire station fuel storage tank decommissioning, we have to create a day tank for this. And so that's what we're going to be working on hopefully this year. And then we'll be able to remove and or decommission the fuel storage tank at Fire Station 4 right now. Still leaves us with plenty of capacity in our fueling throughout our other structures that we have. Talked about the overhead garage doors. There's a large expense here for a gas detection and ventilation system in the fleet garage itself. And then we have our vehicle allocation, which is one automated side loader replacement, a grapple truck vehicle replacement that's in the bulk operation, front loader vehicle replacement in the commercial operation, I believe, and then vehicles and equipment, which is I believe it's a pickup truck.
Two pickup trucks.
Two pickup trucks. Thank you.
Commission.
Hey guys, great job, by the way, Chad. Honestly, really, really good job this year. I do have two quick questions. So the Siemens project, when will we be able to get some hard numbers on the results of this project? I think that's important that we, are completely transparent to the community. I want to make sure that, this project has done everything and more than it was supposed to do, which I think it's online to do. The second question I have is the vehicle PM and repair parts increases $74,000. I thought that during the Vector presentation, they had indicated that because they have purchased so many tools that they get a huge discount and that our costs would actually be reduced. So it could be my hearing and it most possibly is my memory, but if you could expand upon that, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. So the Siemens project, again, our focus right now is to finish the construction. So as soon as that's done, we enter into a new phase, a measurement and verification phase. And that's an annual process where annually we'll look at the performance of that project. And, that offset or that balance, will be discussed and ultimately brought forward as either, there's an adjustment that needs to be made or other conversations. As far as the Vector, a lot of that would be associated with our light duty fleet. because again, what's going to happen is our mechanics are now, our in-house mechanics are now going to be focused on light duty. So we anticipate the PMs and the parts to go up internally. Externally, you're exactly right. Because of Vector's volume contracts that they have, they're able to get parts at approximately 30% less than what we can get them at. So from the heavy duty side, we do anticipate that to help offset some costs. But again, because our equipment is in a state of disrepair, so to speak, there probably will be a large equipment or parts expense the initial year or two to get us to where we need to be with the equipment.
Vice Mayor.
Very good presentation. I too thought it was very good. I know the trouble that we've had with, trying to secure competent people for maintenance of our trucks, mechanics and that sort of thing. And as you know, that I've talked before about a program that the city would sponsor to be able to develop, employees. Again, I just don't think that we're taking it serious enough. If you want me to, I will set up the meeting with Mr. Marlowe. There is a certain percentile of kids that will leave high school with nothing to do, but they're good with their hands. Everybody's not cut out to go to college, sit in a classroom, but they're good at something. If the commission will allow me just for a second, a friend of mine who is an extremely successful business person, Mr. Santucci, has met him, and he's extremely successful. He is not a degreed guy. He is a kid that went to Stranahan High School, and his father said, "You're going to, you're not a kid that get good grades in college is not for you, but you're going to do something." And he got involved in air conditioning, and he said, "It clicked for me. I could fix air conditioning." He ended up buying, from high school, working for a air conditioning company, rose to the top of that, and is today a multi-millionaire. He is extremely successful, and he's writing a book about that. And one of the things that he said to me, he said, "Ben, everybody is not cut out to sit at a desk." He said, "But they can do something." And it's with that if we could create a pilot program, just pick some kids and just start working with them 2-3 days a week, whatever it takes. A lot of the money that we're wasting right now, we would be able, to save. It's an investment at this point, but later it would be a saving. It would give them something to do. Then they weren't the kids that were at the top of the class, but they're kids that are extremely bright, like my friend. And if you met him, you would understand what I'm saying. And I think that we need to explore that. I'll set the meeting up if you want. Talk to Mr. Marlowe, and let's try to really engage, pick some kids and do a pilot program and begin to fix a problem that we know that we're dealing with, and we have it within our means to be able to do that. We actually got more control than it would seem, but we just have to be bold enough, strong enough to step out there and do something a little bit different. And in the process, we actually can solve problems.
So, Vice Mayor, as part of this Vector contract, there is an apprentice program. And, our focus right now is to get Vector on board. But as soon as they are on board and working in the garage, I've already looked at an outline for the apprentice program. And Vector's basically indicated that the value of that program is about $15,000 a year. And we have slots for 4 people every year. So absolutely, we're going to do that. When we're ready, we know how to find you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Don't we also have the YATC right here in our backyard? I mean, it's an established and proven program funded by JM. So I know we've talked about this before. There's no need to comment on it. I'm just making a point. I mean, that's right here in our backyard. The questions that I have for this department is, you're proposing a rate study for solid waste. Does that beg the question does that presuppose that our rates are under market? You wouldn't be asking for a rate study if we were at market. Are we under market? Is it kind of a loaded question?
I think it's important to look at the market as part of the rate study, but when doing so, we have to see what the level of service is with those various rates, because garbage is, Chad has this ingrained in my bread, garbage is always local, right? So it's more about looking at what our expenses are, what our revenues are, what our level of service is, and in making sure that the rate is sufficient to support the operations, if in fact that's the operations that we want to continue with, meaning the level of service. So, but part of that analysis surely is to look at what other cities have in terms of rates, but you always have to compare that with the level of service that they're providing.
I mean, do you know when the last rate study was?
I believe that was
What year?
part of, you can probably answer that.
I don't know when the last rate study was, but the last time the rate was adjusted upwards was 2008. So it's been some time.
Okay. I'm sure it's not included in your proposal, but what I think the working group, solid waste working group, is going to recommend is a waste generation study going forward. That cost is around $2 million. I've talked about this before. The county would pick up the first $1 million, the other $1 million would be divided amongst the 31 sister cities in Broward County, which equates to roughly $1 per person. And if we have 80,000 residents plus or minus, that would be about an $80,000 expense. I'm not saying I'm for it by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm guessing that's the proposal that's going to be coming before this commission at some point, and we can debate it then. But so those $80,000, I assume, are not in this proposed budget. We'd have to find that somewhere.
That is correct. We did not budget for that at this point.
I don't know what the answer is, but it's a question and a debate that we're going to have in the not so far distant future. I am interested in hearing, not tonight though, the recycling options going forward as far as the vision that we've been talking about in the various departments. I mean, I would like to see recycling resumed, but it cannot be the way that we did it before, because the contamination was just way too high. It was at 50%. And even, and get this, we set up the special dumpsters in the east and the west, focused on those individuals who we thought were the super recyclers that would bring the uncontaminated to those locations. And those locations ended up being, in the reports that we received, in the 40% contamination, if not higher as well. So, and now we've not recycled for over a year, and you're going to start the program and you think people are going to do it right. I mean, that's absolute, like Commissioner Hudak was saying, that's absolute madness. People are not going to all of a sudden wake up one day and start recycling correct when we couldn't do it right the first time. We couldn't do it right with the special dumpsters that we set up. So I'm very curious as to what proposals we're going to have going forward, because anything similar to what we did before, I hate to say, but I don't think is going to work. We're setting ourselves up for failure again. And so I'm looking forward to having that debate and discussion before, but I'm I'm adamant that we have a recycling program, but I just don't know what form it looks like, given the behavior. And not just Deerfield Beach, this is, nationwide, the nationwide behaviors that are associated with this. I wrote down beach renourishment, but I'm so tired, I forgot why. So I'm done.
We're all grateful.
I just want to just say to my colleague, Commissioner Drosky, the Youth Automotive Training Center just had a graduation of which I attended. And I was talking to some people about that, and you're right, we have that right here in our backyard. But the transition would be tough because of diesel versus what they're taught over there. They're taught nothing about diesel over there. So that would be the problem.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
One thing to consider when it comes to the recycling, I think the only way, I've noticed that too. I dropped off specifically at the Central City campus to drop off recycling. I looked inside and everything was in a plastic bag. Everybody's recyclables that have been dropped off. I think the only way to do it is if people that choose to participate in the program, that if they do it wrong, they are fined individually. Their contamination at the individual level. I don't know how to do that, but that would certainly cause them to change their habits if they're so passionate about it. And I will say this about Chad, and this is a long running joke, but I believe his Indian name is Rate Study.
What is it?
Because he and I battle about that all the time. But we'll see. We'll see. Thank you. Anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Ms. Clark Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm want to comment about the shredder truck. Are we ever going to get the shredder truck back at the Central Complex?
Do you have any other questions?
And also, do we still have the emergency fund that we were putting monies into for hurricanes and those types of cleanups that needed to be done?
Anything else?
And yes, no, Mayor, that's it.
Thank you. We'll come back to these questions in a minute. Next person.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street. A couple of things. One, I know that David had mentioned putting in car charging stations. Ben mentioned last night, Vice Mayor Ben mentioned last night about individual bike rides. I am part of a group that rides bikes every single Saturday, or the first Saturday of every month. We have a group of anywhere from 40 to 60 bicyclists that ride throughout the neighborhood, starting in the Cove and finishing going down through Lighthouse Point and back across the bridge, over to the island and then back to the Cove. What I would like to see are some bike repair stations. There's a lot of times when we're out on the roads and somebody will get a flat tire. It would be great if we had some bicycle repair stations throughout the city to assist people that are riding their bikes to work, that are riding their bikes for recreation to the beach, however, wherever. And if they had a place to note that there is a bicycling repair station, I can get you some pictures of what they look like in other cities, and maybe we could install some of those that would help out the residents. Secondly, I'd like to see a little bit more information regarding the bulk pickup schedule and how it is going to be cost saving. For the last year, my bulk pickup was supposed to be on Tuesdays, but rarely did it ever get picked up until at least Wednesday. So it sits and makes our neighborhoods look terrible. I know that one of the other commissioners previously mentioned that she doesn't like the fact that people do their cleanup of their house on the weekends and put their bulk trash and everything out on Monday, and their pickup isn't until Thursday. This is going to drastically affect the way our neighborhoods look and the way our streets look. Lastly, the YATC is a great source for teaching trades, and I think we need to team up and add value to that program. It is a really great organization. And if they aren't teaching diesel, then maybe we need to team up with them and teach diesel. Help them, give them the guidance and the additional space or the additional funds to make that a viable solution for these children, for these young individuals that are looking to gain more knowledge in that trade. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. To answer the question about the shredder truck, we discussed that about hiring out for a shredder truck for the events as opposed to buying a brand new one. So it would still take place, but we would probably be looking at doing a rental of one as opposed to purchasing one. Did I get that right? In our emergency fund for hurricanes yes, we have that still. So I'm gonna close it to the public unless there was anybody else. Is there anyone else, Samantha? There isn't. Really?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. The problem with recycling is that different people at different times, I'm going to touch on two quick subjects. People today are give me now. I want it now. They can't be bothered to do it properly. We've tried this for a long time and it's still being contaminated. Answer, if the people won't cooperate, the program can't continue. It's that simple. And it seems that after what, 2 years of trying, we still get contaminated stuff. The city was correct in stopping the program rather than expending extra money for people who just don't care. So until they are totally re-educated or we get a new generation of people that do care about recycling properly, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. Now, as far as educating those who don't want to go to college, when I grew up in New York City, we had vocational high schools. People who didn't want to go to college, people that wanted to learn a trade. We had aviation high school near LaGuardia Airport that taught airplane mechanics and other jobs related to airports. There were cooking schools. They have one now, it's on a college level called New York Tech. They compete with the Culinary Institute every year and are successful. I know because I went to that school. So our real fight for those who don't want to go to college but learn a trade is to get the Board of Education to reopen technical schools that teach a trade so that when people graduate high school, they can get a job as a chef, as a mechanic, as a carpenter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's up to us to insist that the Board of Education be aware of this, that every kid is not going to go to college, but they have to be prepared to make a living. And that comes with technical training. That's the solution to this kind of problem. Not the city run one school for mechanics when there were so many other fields that need employees. And if we really push this with the Board of Education, maybe we can get Broward to open a few technical schools, high schools that will teach trades. Because that would be the future of these people's being able to make a living. And they're needed. We need plumbers. We need electricians. We need people to work on cars. We need good chefs. And that only comes from training. And that is something we can look forward to.
Thank you, Commissioner. That would be helpful for sure. Anything else for you? You're good. Okay, our final one.
Thank you. The final presentation for the evening will be on environmental services. Some of the achievements that we've seen in environmental services from the water plant is upgrades to the fluoride system, raw water well rehabilitation, and the rehabilitation of the 1 million gallon storage tank. That's the one right there on power line. Within the wastewater collection system, we did a station improvement, station number 25 at Deerfield Station. Within our right-of-way enhancements and safety improvements, we have done improvements for Southwest 3rd Ave, Southeast 2nd Avenue, Northeast 48th Street, and we've done over 23 additional traffic calming speed humps and installed over 2,200 linear feet of new sidewalk. Our bond projects are moving along very well at this point. The Center for Active Aging contract with Shift Construction was approved in April 2021. Here in the very near future, we'll have a public engagement session into the design of that facility. The HMG phase 1 of the HMGP construction documents are complete for City Hall, which is the exterior hardening and drainage. If you remember, we had the opportunity to get federal funding to support this project, which was the holdup, but now is moving forward quite well. And the Center for Active Aging is within the more than probably at this point, 75 to 80% on their design. There's been some significant capital improvements that we've done, the main beach restroom renovations, Fire Station 75 renovations, and air quality improvements. That was an unbudgeted project that we had to fit in here. The Constitution Park Phase 2 Arboretum Rainforest, the Facilities Division and the Engineering Division both took part in that. We also are in design in progress for Pioneer Park dock and received grant funding for its construction. So we've also done installation and a lot of fire station improvements to include exhaust systems, life safety improvements, fuel tank replacements, purchased a new trailer for Fire Station 111. And we are also in progress with the aquatic roof replacement, which is the part of middle school athletic complex for the aquatic roof replacement. We do have funds budgeted for the remaining portion of it for next year, but in the interim, I am looking for funding this year, but it's a high price tag item of approximately, I think, $275,000. A lot of improvements that you see within our facilities was done by this department, so I thank them for that. And within the stormwater management, we conducted our first public involvement meeting with the Stormwater Master Plan in November and December to guide the CIP planning. We identified the critical projects in the city for FEMA grants to develop 30% documents for future funding opportunities through FEMA and ARP. We inspected and cleaned Southeast 8th Ave and Southwest 3rd Way to identify deficiencies for improvements, rehabilitated 8 storm drain structures to reduce our I&I, which is infiltration and there's 2 I's, infill and infiltration. Thank you very much. In progress, we currently have lining to restore the structural integrity on Northeast 4th Drive, Southeast 13th Street, 3rd Terrace, Southeast 10th Street, Southeast 15th Avenue, Northwest 3rd Way. And that is it. For our future considerations, the rehabilitation and replacement of utilities assets is important. We have over, I think it's we have about $30 million in the CIP for the 5-year plan. That's not just for this coming year, but over 5 years. Our surtax projects, as we move forward with those, the design for FAU Research Boulevard, budgeted at $48,000. Construction of the bridges, which we've discussed previously, and our current bond projects. So again, talking about the completion of the construction for the Center for Active Aging and the Johnny Tigner Center prior to fiscal year 24 is the target. Secure phase 2 of the HMGP grant for the City Hall renovations. That is forthcoming in this coming year. we believe. And then we do have in here the master planning activities for citywide public safety building program for future CIP project priorities and funding considerations. When it comes to general rehabilitation and general assets, the Pioneer Park boat ramp, that we've got that through the grant funds, the lifeguard towers, roofing throughout the city is included in this budget, awning replacements at our fire station, bollard lights at the beach, fire station 75 generator, and old schoolhouse renovations as well. Deerfield Beach Elementary, the safe routes for school is in design. So this is not the actual elementary school, but the surrounding area around it. And then in stormwater management, it's getting the conceptual design documents underway for the 4 city locations, which would be Southeast 8th Avenue, Martin Luther King Boulevard, Crystal Lake, and Northwest 45th Ave, and the Deer Run community. As mentioned previously, we'd be looking to request the use of American Rescue Plan dollars for that, as stormwater activities are an eligible expense with the ARP funds. This is the entirety of the environmental services budget. They work in several different funds, so it's probably easier to present it in this fashion. We will go into each one of them individually. In the admin and engineering, you're going to see an increase here, but a decrease somewhere else. Okay, so what you're seeing is the addition of a CMMS coordinator. And Mr. Good, if you could just talk about what CMS stands for, the systems that are being put in place, what those systems are going to be, what that's going to be an advantage for us to have, and why this position is needed, please.
Sure. So CMMS stands for Computerized Maintenance Management System. And so really what it is, it allows us to have a better ability to manage the assets that we have. If you can just imagine how much we have in the utility operations, whether it's in the water plant or whether it's out in the field. You know, we have pipes and structures and motors and everything. So this system allows us to identify every single piece of equipment or asset that we have, puts it in a database, we populate it, and we give it, it allows us to then be able to better manage our work order system, better manage monitoring of what is the condition of our system. This is information that will come forward in future years, not only for what resource requirements are, but it helps us determine what our future is going to be based on the condition of these assets. So it's just getting up to the 21st century.
Over in the water plant, we'd be deleting a plant maintenance assistant supervisor. We'd be deleting a water operator, and we would add a facility technician. So the plant maintenance, the water operator is being replaced by the facilities technician. I believe the plant maintenance assistant supervisor is reflected in the slide that you just saw. So it's just moving some things around. The facilities technician, specifically at the plant, provides a little bit different maintenance, or enhanced maintenance is what we really need in that area. So that's why that is being recommended. There's also a reclassification of an environmental compliance manager to the environmental compliance superintendent, and the total all-in cost on that change is $7,000. Tom, can you just speak to that position, what it will now oversee as well?
Sure. So currently the environmental compliance manager just basically oversees the lab in our testing and dealing with our water quality out of the water plant. But this what's happening is we're moving over some field operations that deal with backflow prevention, which is another part of the water quality element, and it puts them out, and it puts this person out into the distribution system as well.
From an operational standpoint, we're experiencing a cost increase in our chemicals of about $104,000. We have some SCADA system PLC programming that needs to take place at $50,000 and well motors at $185,000, which would make up the cost difference from typical operations running. Over in utilities, we would be deleting a wastewater collection superintendent current vacant position and just downgrading. It's a delete and an add technically, but turning that just into a supervisor position at a lower rate. You'd be reclassing a wastewater crew leader to a wastewater collection supervisor. And that's the increase that you see there. And in terms of overall operational changes, it's some additional sewer water line repair and restoration that we've identified and some contractual GIS services. And Tom, if you could just speak to maybe the personnel changes and what we're going to get with those contractual GIS services.
Sure. So the change in personnel is taking a top-heavy organization and making it a little bit more right-sizing the organization. We have two superintendents within the same division. We don't need two superintendents. We only need one, and we need supervisors that work to the superintendent. So it's just a correction of the way the organization was structured a couple of years back. The GIS services, that's basically, we do have some assets that are imported into the GIS system with the IT folks, but it's only like pipes maybe and maybe some valves, but this really captures all of our utility assets on the exterior and the distribution and the collection system. So we can pick up on manholes, we can pick up on fire hydrants, we get them into the system, and essentially anybody can access that information, where our utility assets are. And it also does some corrections too, because a lot of these datas were inputted based off of what we call as-built, and not all as-built are correct. So we have to have some physical checks that these things are actually existing where the as-built say they are.
Thank you. Within construction and facilities management, so this is a general fund account. It would be the deletion of a plumbing journeyman and a facilities technician, creating a facilities operations supervisor and an electrical automation supervisor. And these positions and the recommendation is being made to really enhance in the facilities operations and have oversight over the field operations that are going on out there. And then the electrical automation supervisor is being recommended to have supervision over all the electrical components over the system and our electrical staff that we have out there, to specifically work on that, as well as the increase in the automation systems that we have had, not just in water plant, but in all of our facilities as well. The request includes a lock and key management system. So currently right now we have manual keys. We have multiple keying systems throughout the city. It is being recommended in order to streamline that and make sure that there is a higher level of security with our keys, and just restart, because it's like your house. You rekey things and you create new keys, and where'd the key go? And we just want to make sure that we have the most secure system that we can. It's reliable. There's redundancy built in. There's master key, and all those sorts of things. So bollard lighting and pier replacement, we did talk about that. Roof repairs at city facilities, which I believe were at, I do have those locations. If you could maybe just find those for me, and then I can speak to them. Fire Station 102 painting. This is really securing the envelope of a building is very important. We have put off Fire Station 102 for a little while, and it is time. When you start having cracks and crevices and things like that, the painting is really helps for preventing future deterioration. So contractual remediation services. So remediation could be from water damage and those sorts of things. This is appropriately to budget for it. We usually don't budget for these things, but in anticipation of some of our aging infrastructure, I think it's important that we start showing the cost of what that service is and what those costs are. At Fire Station 51, this is some equipment that we need to install on the facilities end when we do take hold of that station. This is going to be signage and monument signs, I think, and those sorts of things. Am I missing anything included in the Fire Station 51 equipment?
No.
It's the monument sign, and I believe it's the fire alerting system.
Fire alerting system
Yes.
and some furniture type of and appliances.
Yeah. Door access control. Thank you very much. The fire station lease to own. We're getting the station this year, the Fire Station 111. We're doing that through a lease, but we've worked out with the vendor. If we budget for it, we can, with 95,000, we can own it next year. And then on replacements at the fire stations, which we already talked about. And going back to the roof repairs, as I mentioned, do include the pier gazebo. And thank you very much.
So I haven't looked at it.
Okay, thank you. It is, gotcha, City Hall, it's City Hall roof repairs, Central City Campus, we have some repairs that we need to do. BSO, actually all of our fire stations, Pioneer Park, Villages of Hillsboro, and Johnny McKeithen. So these are minor roof repairs. These are not capital expenditures. And what we did is we had a roof assessment done, and this was the result of that roof assessment. Over in infrastructure, there really were no changes there, and the capital outlay has decreased. In stormwater, we've had an increase in our disposal costs of the materials that we pick up from our street sweeping operation. So there's a cost increase there. Now we'll go through the capital program on all these funds. So the advanced metering infrastructure, we've been talking about this for a few years now, and we've like to put the capital dollars towards it to move that project forward. It's a $2.2 million expense. Gravity sewer lining, which is done on a regular basis. We have some water main rehabilitation in there for $220,000. Some additional raw water feed well rehabilitation and upgrades that we need in other locations. The general building and facility improvements. So these are wrapped up into one capital item, but these are for facility improvements within the utility facilities. The filter level valve controls, RO element replacements, and ES building renovations and HVAC replacement is also a recommendation from the department at this time. There's some high service pumps, some generator day tanks that need to be replaced, some and additional equipment at the water plant to include fiber optic upgrades, operator control console upgrades, transfer switches, and bulk chemical storage tanks that have been identified for capital replacement. Within the utilities fund is some building improvement on the lab, within the lab. We have vehicle replacements of soft fleet vehicles at 180,000. And pipe storage, the canopy, which is the pipe storage area, putting a canopy on there so that our pipes, that's our inventory of pipe, is in is removed from the elements to the best that we can. And then rehabilitation of manhole costs is at $40,000. From stormwater, stormwater improvements at $400,000. What this is, and this is something that we've been budgeting for, and it's actually worked out really well, is that during the course of any given year, something's going to break out there. And these stormwater improvements, when something is identified as a pipe failure, they are not cheap. So we do a capital budget item of $400,000 to address those things as they come forward. We do need a new street sweeper. That cost is $300,000. And then there is another a backhoe combination for stormwater, that's used to dig up the ground when we do these projects. Also, City Hall drainage project, which is through the HMGP grant, and Crystal Lake drainage, which is through the MPO grant, all stormwater activities. From the surtax funding, we're looking at the FAU Research Boulevard, citywide pedestrian lighting improvements, the rehabilitation of Southeast 13th Avenue, and the Pioneer Grove design as well. And I think that includes, there's not an element of stormwater in that because the surtax doesn't fund stormwater. That's for the roadway improvements in Pioneer Grove. Yes. Over in the general fund, here is the list of the capital request. So it's the West Community Center. These are the capital replacements on the roof replacements. So this would be the old schoolhouse, the pier gazebo, and Mayo Howard. As we mentioned earlier, the Aquatic Center roof replacement. In here is the Public Safety Master Plan at $600,000. Generator replacements, the Pioneer Dock ramp and piling replacements, the lifeguard towers, which is trying to remember if that's one or two, if you know if that's one or two. So it is 2 lifeguard towers. I thought at that amount it was. So this would be the new one on the north end and then the existing one on the north end. So I apologize for that earlier. Looking at, again, Mayo Howard Park improvements. So this is not the parking lot improvements that we were talking about earlier. This is over at, or is this the same one?
I believe that this is part of the same one here. It's $154,000 out of here.
Okay.
So the $200,000 earlier, I do believe that it was for some other items as well that we may have not captured, and I think it got cut off.
Okay. Well, we already talked about this, and I've gotten the feedback that I need on that. So middle school aquatics parking lot improvements. So we do have drainage issues over there at the middle school, and we're looking to try to make some improvements there. Of course, it really becomes a larger issue in that area, but this alone will help that. And then we have a vehicle replacement, which is a truck. That concludes this portion of the presentation.
Is there anyone from the public that want to comment? I'll close it to the public then. Commission.
Sorry, but I do have a comment. There are a lot of areas in the city that need capital improvement. And one of the things that I'm thinking of is Palm Plaza and the parking lot there. That's something that has been promised for a long time. And again, it's not in the budget. And I was just curious, when do we have a punch item of all of these things that we need to address and kind of a goal of when we're actually going to address them? I mean, I see a lot of projects and appreciate it, but there are also a lot of projects that, like the Palm Plaza parking lot, like the Cove parking lot that hasn't been striped in I don't know how long, that still are not on the budget. So I'd like to know where we stand with those. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't believe that the Palm parking lot, and Palm Plaza parking lot.
If you go back one slide, we have surface parking lot improvements. Let's see here.
Would that be near Road and Bridge?
It would be under Road and Bridge.
I probably went too far. Might be an operational line item.
There was, yeah, what we intend to do over 5 years is identify one parking lot in each, one critical parking lot in the city. This includes the main beach parking lot, Palm Plaza, the Cove. And each of these parking lots will be identified one per year. Palm Plaza, we already have an estimate of $100,000 to do that parking lot. So that one actually is the first one in year one that's been identified. Now the Cove has a separate funding source. So that is something that we might be able to do concurrently because that's actually earmarked fund for the Cove. So that is something that we're able to do now. We did restripe the Cove this past summer when COVID originally hit. We used that opportunity to go out there when there was nobody parking there, and it worked out really well. So that was just done last summer. So hopefully you saw an improvement. Okay.
Commissioner?
So I'm having a little trouble matching up the capital program with the slides. So like, for example, slide 64 is the construction and facilities. The proposed requested capital outlay is 2.9 million. And then there's all these slides with the proposed, with the projects behind it. So how would I know? I mean, you have the funding source. Is there a code for the construction and facilities? How would I know what falls into that category? And like the next slide on page 65 is the infrastructure category. The fiscal year 22 request is 5.3 million. So how do I know which of these projects on these slides fall under that particular request? And then the next slide, I think I can figure out, because slide 66 is the stormwater fiscal year 22 request, 1.4 million. And on page 70, there's 3 projects that say funding source stormwater fund. So I'm guessing that's where those come from. But it all doesn't match up. I'm kind of trying to figure out which projects go on which slide. Is there an easier way to do this?
Sure.
So I can just say that we did this for presentation purposes. We sort of just try to line up, the funding sources, but each of these projects are identified in the budget, and we can redo the list to do it just as you asked for. So if it's in a stormwater account, then we can make the presentation for those capital projects just for all the stormwater.
So for instance, when you talk about construction facilities management, if you look at this slide here in general fund, that's the general fund division for environmental services. So you see the 2.9 here. When you're talking about the surtax projects, a lot of this is going to be in your road and bridge. So that's how they line up. And I realize that they don't match the divisions, but we wanted to make sure that you could see which major fund, how these capital projects would be funded. And we can definitely realign those for you to show you that.
Or just add an extra column, after funding source as to what department or what slide it matches up to. I mean, you can figure that out. I'm not here to tell you how to do that, but just a better way just to kind of match it up. The other thing is on page 70, it has Crystal Lake drainage, but you talked about the drainage for Deer Creek earlier, and that was one of the projects that we requested state funding, and it did not pass the legislature this year for that particular funding request. Is that anywhere in here on the priorities list?
So you're not going to see this in this capital request because we have not determined, I talked about the ARP funding.
Mm-hmm.
And so the recommendation on those 4 projects, those are going to be presented to you for consideration through the ARP.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And to just be completely transparent, the ARP is a fund now, right, in our budget, but we're yet to fill that. So.
But we're going to have that discussion.
Thank
Thank you. To Commissioner Hudak's point, I think a punch list, like Priscilla brought up, that we have Palm Plaza looking at year one of a 5-year plan. Where do we get to see that 5-year plan as far as what we have lined up? Is that in the budget? Is that just something, is that a document that exists out there that we, at what point does the commission get to look at that?
We're happy to provide that to you. I'm sure we have that
It's-
document.
it's-
Yeah.
If I may, it's in our 5-year capital plan.
Okay.
So we have the documentation. I mean, you're going to see that as well too.
I think this
That-
should
that
be
will come
part of the
forward.
budget part of it. Yeah, I think that's helpful for us to be able to take a look at that 5-year plan.
Okay.
So in case we need to prioritize,
Mhm.
certainly I would imagine we'd want your expertise. It wouldn't be willy-nilly, but there might be some things that we hear that needs to be changed as far as priority, and that would be helpful for us.
Mhm.
I think anyways. Yeah. Anything else? All right, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Oh, before you do, Mayor, I just had that one.
Oh, I'm so
one
sorry.
comment to put on the
Anthony.
record.
Yes,
So the mayor promised me I promised the mayor I'd keep it to 30 minutes. So
perfect.
no, it's a very quick comment. I just need to request an executive session concerning the following litigation cases, both of which are in the 17th Judicial Circuit Court in for Broward County. The first one being City of Deerfield Beach versus Christina S. Clothier, case number CACE 21-010038, and the second one being City of Deerfield Beach being the Christina S. Clothier et al. Case number CACE 19-009856. So that will be coordinated through the city manager's office. So you'll be getting contacted shortly to facilitate scheduling that meeting. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
No.
Knock yourself out, brother.